podcast intro.
Okay.
So, cue the music. The intro's coming in.
Pineapple Podcast. Pineapple Podcast. Pineapple Podcast.
Cue the music. Yeah, you know.
All right. Welcome back to the Pineapple Podcast. I'm Tyler.
I'm Matt.
I'm Dave.
And I'm Josh.
All right. We're here to talk about anything from music, just to life, to restaurants, to movies, anything.
Awesome.
All right. So basically, start off, I think we should get to know each other a little better. You know, first episode's behind us, but, now it's time to kind of ask some questions to each other and
Let's get personal.
let's get personal. So I guess I want to start with Dave.
All right.
So
I'm on the spot.
I know some of this, but
Do you?
what
Do you really?
when you started, what made you want to start Pineapple? That's what I want to know.
Well, that's deep. What do you mean?
Yeah, what made you want to have a studio as opposed to play trombone?
Or the sexy phone.
The
yeah.
sexy phone. Well, first off, I never played the sexy phone, so there's that.
Not yet.
But I just really, actually, I really enjoyed music. I'm good musically, but I never quite achieved that level of musicianship in terms of playing an instrument. But I found I had an ear for it, and really enjoyed the tech side of things. And that was my way to, or has been my way to contribute to music in general for other people. And I like it. I like being involved in the process of making it, the creative side of things, all of that.
Working with artists.
Working with artists, being part of the process, and then being able to bring like that tech element into it, and help people make their music better. That inspires me to kind of keep going with it. And that's,
Did you play anything like when you kind of first got started, or no?
I was a trombone player all the way through high school, and then I went to college as a trombone performance major for a little bit, and then and then I ducked out of that and got into trades for a little bit, that kind of thing, and then I put the two together and started doing the trade tech kind of side of things for music. And that's
cool. Were you always like, even through the times of trombone, were you doing any recording kind of stuff like that? At that time?
No.
Not even like
never.
a mixtape with like a cassette tape off the radio? Like, did you ever experiment with recording as a kid?
I
feeling the pressure, guys.
I'm feeling the pressure. I'm sweating.
Don't ask so many questions.
No, I actually recorded like a song once as a application to get into. It's like for my college.
Like audition?
Yeah, that kind of thing, and then submitted for a couple scholarships. You had to like put in a recording of you playing like an etude.
What did
or
you play?
something.
Do you remember? Like,
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Sound it out for us.
Something in some key by so and so. I don't know. One of those ones. It's like a book full of them. It's like blah 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 in B flat. But yeah, that was as far as my recording experience ever went.
Yeah.
Up until then, and then and then I got into the wonderful world of Logic. That was down the rabbit hole.
What was your first setup like that you used to start recording?
I had an iMac, one of the
multicolored screen ones?
the metal screen stands, but the ones that were like probably about 1.5 or 2 inches thick before they went super flat. And I got Logic 9. I think it was 9. When it was still like a 12 disc, like it's like buying Lord of the Rings extended edition
Yeah.
with like it's like this is gonna take 4 days to install on for DVDs. But yeah, that was my first. And then my wife Rosalind actually got me a Apogee Duet for Christmas
Nice.
because I got some KRK monitors, and then I realized I can't plug it into my computer. I'm like,
Oh,
I need something here.
shit.
So yeah, that was my first little setup, and went
Sure
from
is
there.
grown, that's for sure.
Yeah, I had no idea how to use it, and I was like, well, I think I gotta go have somebody teach me. So I enrolled, got learning.
That's awesome.
Yeah, this is gonna take way too long by myself.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, it was days before I learned how to load up an instrument. And like, here, so I have Logic now. I'm like, how do I get sounds coming out? Not that. Took forever.
That's funny.
Come a long ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it sure's been handy for me
Yeah. Taught
to
you a few
absorb all
things.
the knowledge.
Taught you a few. It's
Yeah.
but you bring lots to the table and
Yeah.
teaching me stuff too.
Yeah, I'm on a different side, but it's nice to have like actually, this is what it's actually supposed to be, and then you can break the rules after you know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
There's-
cool. So, and this isn't this is the third iteration of the studio, right? Technically?
I would say the second. We're at it's like 2.5.
2.5.
Well, I wouldn't call my first setup a studio. That was just I had a computer with some monitors plugged into it and playing around, and then set up a little studio in the basement at our last house, and then when I outgrew that, built this one. So this is number 2, but then brought in the walls and did some gear upgrades and stuff like that. But this is
The Steinway.
this is like the little things.
Little things.
Yeah,
Model D.
yeah, little upgrades.
That's awesome.
That must have been like bringing that thing in here.
The movers.
Yeah, but like, how did they get it in here?
They take the
It's
leg,
9 feet long.
legs off and up on its side, and they go really fast with it, like whoa, like don't worry, we do this all the time. They're like wow, 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 wow. Like
Wow.
it's like okay, see it, and it's all done. They walk
That's
away.
crazy.
How
I'd
many
be so
pianos can
intimidated.
2 guys move in a day? We do this all the time.
Or even a
like-
year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are they
Right.
doing
I don't
all
know.
the
I
time?
don't know how many 9-foot pianos are out there that are even available to move. But,
Don't worry about it. We got this, man. We're all day.
yeah. Oh well, it's just our 3rd Model D today.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
How about you, man? How did you get started?
Well, I started, I guess, in like elementary school. We had like choir, so I remember I started like singing, doing that. Or you mean recording?
No, go for it. Just
Oh.
musical, like just your career in music.
Yeah, I started. We started doing that, and I remember realizing I liked to sing, and then from there it went to like picking up guitar and doing that, and then my stepdad had a Tascam 4-track tape recorder, and I remember just figuring that like by trial and error, just be like, okay, so record 1 track, and then you can add on top and add another one, and then mix those down because you've only got 4 to work with, and then you got 3 more, and then mix that down, and then figuring out that you can't just take that tape out and then give it away because you sound like a chipmunk. And then luckily he had like a stereo beside it, so I figured like, okay, maybe if I send it out, and I don't even know how I figured that out actually because I was pretty young. But that was like the very first time recording. And then me and Josh, when we were in that Adamant band, we went to Tom Lee and we got quoted out to get this it's like a Roland VS-18, and it's like one of those self-contained recording units, 18 tracks.
It was like a Tascam or something like that,
It's
or
a
those
giant one.
radars.
Essentially, right?
I think we had I think that was one of the first ones that I recorded. Was a 12? I think a VS, like a. There was a version of it at least.
Right.
When you said it, all of a sudden it just dawned on me that yes, that was one of the first ones. Besides recording to when you could when I was a little kid, like a little ghetto blaster, you could kind of record into, and then you could play it and record to yourself, kind of playing.
Like
or
Fisher
something
Price one.
Something like that.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But besides that, yeah, you're right. That just dawned on me that I think actually I think I saw it in the studio just the other day, still sitting there, and I was like, "What is that?" And I completely forgot, and it was so difficult to use.
Yes.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Not very
Like,
user friendly at
really
all.
difficult to really difficult to use.
It's crazy how far it's all come now.
Yeah.
Like, especially from even being able to record on a laptop before and edit and get in there. Like now it's like, I feel like things just happen easier. Like part of it's also growing and learning more, but now it's like you can just line stuff up and chop and crossfade and like stuff just works easier. You know?
It's almost too easy that people are just like, you just kind of go, yeah, whatever, fix it. Like
Fix and post.
rather than just like it's this is going to tape, and if we just have to record it right, because cutting the tape is way too difficult to do. So it'd just be easier to record it again and make sure it's perfect.
Yeah.
Now everybody's get that later.
Well, it's
Fix it
crazy
up.
how much like we were quoted. I think it was like $6,000 back then to do that. We were just out of high school, right? And so we're just like, oh, maybe we'll just get the unit and then kind of go from there. And we had like headphones and a PA system, and from that, what did we go to, Josh? We did the Digio 2, I think.
I think that is correct.
Yeah,
We
Pro Tools,
did a
Digios.
recording session at
Oh,
a studio.
yeah.
We were the first band to go through the studio, and we didn't know better at all. But like, we get to the studio, so get this, Matt, and they don't have monitors for their mixing setup. And they're like, guys, you gotta rent these monitors so the studio can, do your stuff. It's pretty standard. And we're like,
I love it.
And now
It's
we're
pretty
older. And
standard?
like, well, because it's like, well, what are we gonna listen to? We need the monitors. You gotta pay for the monitors, rent them or whatever. And it's like, how did the studio? It was like so new. They didn't have the monitors yet. And we were like, yeah, okay, it's cost this much on the recording fee.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just a new band, like, oh, in a studio, like, sweet.
Wow. You know what's interesting though is that like hearing those stories is interesting because my daughter and I were talking about like she's 7, and so I was just mentioning to her like the advancement in skateboarding. I loved skateboarding as a kid and still love skateboarding. Everything hurts way more now than it ever did. But it's interesting because I would look when I was young growing up. I remember like watching it on like VHS, and like as we were talking about earlier, that's where I found out about like DJ Hurricane and like all these like Tribe Called Quest and like all these bands that I just like fell in love with. And it was on these VHS tapes. But I would like to watch a pro. You would actually have to quickly like and you're stopping watching what they're doing, and it was so quick that I didn't know what they were doing. But now you can slow-mo, like YouTube, you're going through and you
Great.
can analyze
Super
absolutely everything. And I even know, like, for me, like, when I had a chance a few years back to record, like, my very first, like, it was always something I wanted to do was to write my own album, to perform all the instruments, to mix it, to do the whole thing. And it was a ton of fun. It was a lot of hard work. And my assistant that was always there with me was YouTube. Always. Right? Like I had yes, guys in the band, like Andy, our bass player, he's phenomenal. Like he went to school for it. He knew, like, he knows the ins and outs. And so when I was struggling with why did this, like, he of course was the quick, easy reference. But when I was too embarrassed to ask, like, I would just go on. And I was like, somebody else has had to have had this happen to them. And they would go on and, oh, that's why you do this. And, oh, this is why you don't record with all the vocal effects on it. You put them on later. And, like, all they're like, oh, like, or, oh, you need to, bring this down to a submix. And, like there was all these things that I learned over YouTube. And YouTube was such an educational way for me to take schooling in it that I felt confident in it. And then it became fun. And it's interesting, though, because, like, there were people that would, like, I remember telling people, yeah, I did this, and they're like, oh, how long did you go to school for? I was like, oh, I didn't. I just learned, like, oh, so you're just, like, kind of faking it then. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, okay, well, I did the whole album.
Can it be in between those two options?
So I know,
Yeah,
and then I'd
there's-
be like, instantly like, so maybe I didn't do it right? And, like, yet, in the end, it's so funny because, like, there's so many ways that we can get to a final product, which is a song being recorded and finished. And some are going to have, like, it's interesting. Like, I remember listening to a submix, like, one time when we got a rough mix done and I was listening to it. And it sounded so good in the studio. And then I went home and listened to it on my, like, what I always listen to, on, like, my AirPods or, like, headphones or something. I was like, this sounds like garbage. And yet I knew that majority of people are going to be listening on headphones. So then we had to rethink the whole thing of what the mix, like, where things needed to sit, because it sounded so good on these amazing speakers.
Yeah.
But that's not the world. We don't all sit back
No.
like I mean, I had an uncle in Switzerland who had these like just incredibly expensive. He's like, you got to listen to this. And I was like, you're one in a gajillion that has these, you know, the price of a car speakers to sit down and so you get to analyze every little thing. But most people don't care. And it's interesting because when you then, like for my daughter, she just is used to hopping on, like when she wants to learn anything, she hops on YouTube and it's like there is going to be a tutorial. That to me is like such an amazing tool, but at the same time, that's why I get excited about having this opportunity to be able to utilize and share the knowledge and this stuff. Like even all your scripts and the things that you did, there's someone else, because I remember sitting there with all sorts of things as well, being like, what the fuck am I doing? and fibbing my way through it. And luckily, and some of the things just never worked. So I'd have to end up dropping it. Well, what if there was a genius idea that didn't work just because I just couldn't find the answer.
The technical side of it
totally.
wasn't being the artistic side of it.
Totally. So that's where I think that, like, you know, when you share, like, how you got into it, because I've always been fascinated, too, that, like, my assumption, because I remember meeting, like, engineers and producers and being like, wait, you don't really even play an instrument? But they had such a good ear for music. And I was like, man, because that was their instrument. And I was like, it was so neat to me to hear. That's why I was curious about, like, so what did you play? Like, even trombone, like, and you're like, yeah, I went into this, then I did this, and I went to here, and you can see how your path went. And when you get a chance to hear where your path went, it just kind of like gives freedom. So whoever's watching knows, like, oh, cool. Like, I don't play an instrument. I guess I can't, you know, record music. It's like, no. That's what I was excited to hear. Like,
you can be a musician up here even if you don't have the chops for it.
That's
Like
so
honestly,
cool.
That's a whole thing in itself, right?
Yeah, but like
So-
name a sport where you can be an amazing like athlete when you don't have the athletics.
Yeah.
Well,
It ain't happening.
It's true. It's true.
That's interesting, right?
Right? Like it's so cool. And to know,
But you have sportscasters and you have coaches and you have all those kind of things, and those guys
statistics
just because the guy can't throw like a quarterback doesn't mean he's not
that's a
an
good point,
asset
too.
to the game, right?
let's cut
there's-
this part out because I liked my line.
Yeah. Wait, that's a good point.
Crap! That's a really good point. Very, very astute observation.
Oh, two Chet.
That's awesome.
Uh,
Yeah, you're right. I should.
That's hilarious, though. One thing, I was trying to remember the name of her, but she's a musician who licenses a lot of songs for like movies and stuff, and she was doing a podcast, and she was basically saying something that I've thought about before, where like she doesn't listen to a lot of music. Like she's a musician and she really doesn't listen to a lot of music. She listens to podcasts and I remember there's times throughout my life where I've been like I'd listen to the same thing just over and over. Like there's a year where I only listened to Coheed and Cambria or Tool, or I'd like stick to the one band and then that's it. Or I just wouldn't listen to a lot of music for a while. I'd still be like enjoying writing it, right? And I remember feeling kind of weird about that. Like, oh, is there something wrong with me? And then when I heard her say it too, I was just like, oh, okay. And she put it to kind of like I used to mount TVs, and my HDMI wire at home was exposed out of the wall because I was like, oh, I do this all day. I don't want to go home and do it, right? So that's what she said. She's like, sometimes like when you listen, and I know it's almost like a bit of a curse. When you're listening, you're like, you're not listening. You're kind of like, oh, I can make something like that, or oh, I wonder how they did that. And I find myself always doing that, and I hear. Like, as I've grown musically, I remember how I used to listen to music when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I miss a bit of that because I didn't have that, like, when I was really young. Like, I heard songs a different way. And now when I hear them, I'm like, oh, that sounds completely different. I hear different things about it. And sometimes it's nice because I'm like, oh, I can kind of grow from it. But then sometimes it's, like, distracting.
I miss the ignorant bliss of just enjoying music for music. I can't anymore. I can't go to a show. I can't listen to the radio without. I can't. There
can't turn it
is
off,
no aspect of my life where music doesn't pop up where I'm not like over analyzing it, and I never just sit there and like enjoy something. I'll go to the show and be like, this room sounds this way, blah blah blah. Like I obsessively do it too. It's like a problem. My friends tell me to shut up all the time. They're like, just shut up, Dave.
That's
like,
funny. It's like, oh, what? So that's a curse. What about the DJ curse of like can't listen to more than like a minute of a song? Like you start it. And
I have
Okay,
that curse.
next.
I know in my family like crazy. If I'm not feeling it,
yeah.
it's like it's switching through. Okay, so when you were talking though, like with music and stuff like that, is there a song you can think of that right now that it brings you back to a place or a moment as soon as you think of the song.
It's actually a video game music called Final Fantasy VII. Anytime I hear something from that, it just makes me like,
You right back?
I'm just like, oh, it reminds me of being in like my dad's rec room as a kid,
Oh,
just
that's
playing
cool.
until like 5 a.m. We'd be going upstairs to go to bed. He'd be coming down from work. We're like, all right, good night, Dad. And just like the story and like the time of my life, and it was all we were doing is playing games and
Yeah.
hanging out with friends, and
Yeah.
we'd have like 2 TVs side by side, both playing the game. Like Josh, we actually that's how we met. Or not how we met, but when we first hang out, he came over to watch me play Final Fantasy VII. He was
I had a
using me.
Super
To watch
I
you
had a-
play.
'cause I had a Super Nintendo. We didn't have a PlayStation in my house.
Oh, I love it.
And it was a great game, and he was around the corner.
Yeah.
And you can't, it's not like I was playing one sitting. I'm not going, oh, that looked cool. I don't need closure.
Well, it's,
Yeah.
That was fine. I don't
it's
want
like
to know what
going to
happens
watch
next.
a movie.
It really
It's
works.
like, wow.
Josh is the best to play games with because he's totally cool. Like
And the
watching.
worst.
And the worst, actually, super annoying because he'd be like, "Did you check that? Go around that corner. Go check that chest." Like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you didn't get that chest." I'm like, "I'm done with this room. We're going. We're
You're gonna
moving
miss all
along."
the good stuff.
It's funny, man. I was that guy that would watch my friends. Like we'd all come hang out at stuff like when I was a kid, when we were kids. And I remember watching them, and I was totally fine watching. But I always, and even now, I realize I still play games like this now because my brother-in-law, like he's amazing at video games as well. And I would watch him, and I'd go to play, and I was like, oh, he can't jump that far. And he's like, it's not like we're not following the rules of life.
Yeah.
Because I'd be like, oh no, that's way too far. That's a 12-foot jump. He can't
couldn't
make a
do that.
12-foot jump, right? Like, and it's like, and so I'd just be like, well, that's it.
That's it. I don't
I
like
guess
Mario.
the game's over. You can't make a 12-foot jump. He's like, actually, you can jump like 20 feet. Like, but, no, I was just thinking about like what you said. Like, first of all, like, there's lots of songs that bring me back to places, and I think that's one thing that makes music so special is how
Totally.
it can take me back. Like, besides,
What's ones for you?
so the first one I think of right away is a song I actually wrote, "Shadows of the Moon," but it's because I wrote it with my daughter.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first ones that was like, I was super proud of the song. It was very technical, but it also just had this gorgeous melody. And I wrote it with her. So that's one. But actually, the one that it's weird because when you were talking, and you were sharing like just now, actually, the song that popped in my head was "Find My Way" by 9 Inch Nails. And it's interesting. I was obsessed with that album when we were in Japan the first time, and I remember my daughter had just been born. And I remember just crying on this train. We were going to Tokyo, and that song was, and it was just the way that it's so beautifully written, so well written. I love 9 Inch Nails, and I was just like, I really wish I'd have written that. Like, you get that? There's a song you're like,
Oh, right.
fuck, I
get
wish
that.
I'd have written
I
that.
totally
Like,
get that.
it's just so good, and it just deeply impacted me. And it's one of those things that I think that like, that's one thing I love about music, and I love because I actually think one of the things that we want to talk about today. But I love that you brought up that what brings you back was actually a video game, because I think that is like phenomenal. That was like how many years ago for you,
Yeah.
but today, two of the most. And this is one thing. Like actually, I wanted to hear if you had a song first because I can go into that. But
I can't think of what the actual song title is called, but there's 2 albums specifically. That's Offspring.
oh,
What's Smash?
Smash with Keep 'Em Separated on it. Keep 'Em Separated.
Yeah, especially that song actually.
Yeah. That's great for
that
COVID.
one. That one brings you back.
That's a
That
great
one,
COVID
and
song,
then
That's awesome.
the Sublime self-titled, the really fast one, Down Mississippi with the Sun.
Oh, yeah.
that song. Those 2.
Oh, I forgot about that.
With my brother's 14 years older than me, so he got he'd buy new CDs and he'd throw them in the car and he's driving around, and I was like really little, and he's like
Wow, you got
stuff like
introduced to
that.
some good stuff
Anyways,
at a
and I
young
was like,
age.
I'm like, whoa, and he's like, don't say mom, don't
Yeah.
tell mom and dad, don't tell them. Of course, I would go back and say all these words.
Yeah.
but,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
like at that age, getting to listen to stuff like that, and like he was showing me like all these crazy like parental advisory
yeah.
albums that I would never normally listen
That's
to
the
at that
best.
age.
It made the album. That was an indicator that you were like, oh, this is gonna be good.
This is
Oh,
gonna be
yeah.
a good
Oh.
one.
This is gonna be really good. Yeah,
The forbidden fruit.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the best thing. Like my older brother Corey, he had so many CDs, and like you get to hear all the stuff that you'd never be exposed to, right? Because like probably back then I was like Z95 or something like that, right?
Yeah, I had a friend Harry who was older than all of us, and he was like, kind of. I mean, I was always the younger one amongst them, and they were all in the bands, and I idolized them, and I looked up to them, and it was just like, and I feel very, very blessed that I was able to be introduced to those guys. And yeah, he was always like, check out this album and check out this, and he'd always be bringing, and like, much like we were talking about earlier, like how, you know, I would be listening to like any sort of skate video or whatever it was, this, and I'd be like, who is this? Like, and I'd be introduced to all this music, and then years later you're still in love with the song, but it brings you right back to like those times. And that's one thing that I love about music, is that it's able to bring you back to those places,
and it makes you feel things.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you guys ever played games listening to albums. Like for me,
Oh, yeah.
I used to play Super Mario 64 while listening to No Doubt Tragic Kingdom. So like so many of the levels, like the sand level, all by yourself. That
did you have to sync them up?
I didn't even have to do it. It just happened to like there's certain
Again?
levels that remind you. Okay, play it again.
Yeah.
Or me and Josh used to play this fighting game called Project Justice on Dreamcast, and we'd listen to Schism by Tool just on loose.
Yeah.
Oh, Dreamcast was a treat.
I missed that boat.
Really?
Oh,
I
It
totally
was a
missed that
fast boat. It wasn't built very well, but man, did we have fun.
There's a lot of
boat.
pirating.
It was fun.
Yes.
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 Josh,
flea
how about you for
For stuff?
song
Just generic stuff?
that pops out? Oh, and what's your background?
I know we don't want to skip them.
We
Oh,
can't
no,
skip you.
I'm fine with just sitting back and listening. And
Well,
great.
but
I got a lot.
We
so,
want to hear this.
So let me start at the beginning. So unlike, I think, so Dave, do you have a musical, like, parental figure of some kind?
Yes.
Okay, so Matt does, Tyler does. I don't know if Matt even knows this, but my dad is actually deaf. So growing up, music for my family, for him, it was like, I wanted to play piano so bad, and he's like, only if you play soccer. You know, like, the opposite. It wasn't like I really wanted to take piano lessons. I don't know
The only
how.
soccer player playing with a piano attached to him?
Yeah.
I love this.
I wish. Like a little guitar.
Yeah.
So, similar also actually to Matt, like in church, singing in the choir, like musical stuff from getting exposed that way. And then took piano lessons as a kid. I threw up before every recital. Just that's the way I was. And my parents would be like, okay, he's fine. He's going to get up.
He's so gifted.
Yeah. Blah.
Pukes on command.
Feel better, go up, play the stuff. And then we moved from Edmonton to BC, which is the stories of how we met Tyler eventually. And I was in cadets growing up, and rather than doing all the flying...
Air or Army?
Air.
Air.
The best one.
I
the
was
one
in Air Cadets too.
Good.
Cadets.
Whew, that could have been awkward, Dave. But I did the one weird thing that an air cadet did, and that was join the bagpipe band, because that's typically a brass band in the air cadet program. The Army cadet program was the one with the more Highland kind of stuff, the more the bagpiping. So I'd be like the one air cadet kid who get shipped off to the Army cadet camps to like play bagpipes. So I learned a lot about Celtic music and bagpiping, and eventually got really into it. I've got some friends who are like at the top of the level, like CD quality, giving professional performances. I'd love to have them on the show sometimes. Tyler knows Zephin.
Definitely, he's
Do you-
awesome.
Yeah,
Are they in the SFU pipe band?
one of them, yes,
Yeah.
and other ones in different places. Actually, the guys who run the SFU pipe band, their kids went to my high school, and they make bagpipes professionally now. And like,
That's crazy.
yeah, Lee bagpipe. And these are like he's considered probably like the father figure of the family, Jack Lee. Gold medal winning like the top awards around the world, and considered like one of the best bagpipers probably of the modern times.
Do you still play at all?
No, because I don't have a place to practice them in my apartment.
Josh was one of the top Canadian bagpipers in Canada. Hence
For
the Canadian.
cadets, for cadets.
That's unbelievable.
Not after
That's
that.
crazy.
That is so cool.
It is a pretty cool thing. So you can get these like smaller bagpipes called shuttle pipes that are more indoor, and you can play them with other instruments. Like a bagpipe is like one volume, you know, like it's loud.
Oh, they're basically the bagpipe without the bag, essentially, right?
there's
It's
a
more
bellows-
like a reeded.
There's a bellows
No, it's
blown
true.
one. The shuttle pipes
That's actually the technical definition right there.
they still have a bag.
Okay.
You don't have to blow with some of them. They have like a bellows. Like
practice pipes or whatever.
oh yeah, those
little-
are chanters, but you
Okay.
can't really play those without circular breathing, which I don't want to do.
Yeah.
I don't like it. If it
I don't
confuses
even
me,
know
I'm
what he's
bad
talking
at it.
about now.
That's breathing in while you're still playing. So you,
He's
so you're,
got-
so you're,
That's sorcery.
So you're,
It's
no,
crazy.
yeah,
It's
that's-
impossible.
That's
Isn't that like
a,
what mermaids do?
Yeah,
he's
they're like
got,
mystical Celtic mermaids, which I think would be called. Oh, there's a name for that, like a selkie.
Can you still do it, Josh? Your neck thing?
Oh yeah. Oh, you can't see it with the.
He
with the
does
stuff on.
like he can literally go, like, come out like a frog.
What?
Yeah.
Because the story behind that was there's this old man at bagpipe camp being like, if you blow with your cheeks too much, they're gonna droop. You don't want droopy cheeks. And I was like, I don't want droopy cheeks. So I just blew out of my neck.
Oh my goodness, I love that story.
Yeah.
So
big
goes home
frog.
with the fear of God of droopy cheeks.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, you'll poke your eye out.
We had where we live now, we had this neighbor, and he has passed away now, but it was the most amazing thing because we live on acreage, and he was Barry the bagpiper. And so he would come out and he had this gorgeous white beard, and he wasn't good. But it was awesome because it lit up our, like, we all have like, it's beautiful, and it was so much fun to just have him. We're like, oh, Barry's out. Like, it was this cool, like, I don't know, like, it just set the tone for, and when he passed away, like, I remember he just was, it was just awesome. We really, really, even now, like, I mean, when do you get that in your
Yeah.
neighborhood, right? Where it's like, you just, like, there was just this cool, he'd come out and you could tell he loved it, and he would just play his bagpipes in the backyard, and Barry the bagpiper was out. And we loved it. We'd just be outside, skateboarding on the street, doing whatever, and there's Barry playing. And it was so neat because it wasn't like it was absurdly loud. It was just in the background, like this cool, like,
He must have been far away.
he was, yeah.
That's why it wasn't that loud.
It was really cool.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
Barry the bag.
It carries. It's
So, what about a song for you? Something that brings you back.
I'll go with one of my earliest memories with my cassette tape player and listening to music in headphones by myself in my room, and I had Michael Jackson's Thriller album.
Ooh, classic.
So I was in grade 2, and hearing all the stereo effects, like we talked earlier about the mix and how, like, on the speakers is different than the headphones. Like, an album that's been properly mixed to be a treat in headphones, oh, what a treat when you're a kid and you're just finally figuring out the, like, left side, right side, like the different...
You're like, wow.
it was super, super cool. And
Sorcery.
Yeah.
it had an A side and a B side, you know, the rewinding and all that. Just taking a pencil and having to, like, turn it to fix your tape when it was all busted,
Yeah.
you know?
Holy, that's rad.
But good memories with the Walkman.
Rewinding, hey?
Yeah.
That's
The hit song on the radio where you're like, you gotta wait for it to come on and then tape it.
And I did that, a lot. And that's probably, like, before I became a DJ or recording in any way. That was definitely my first. I had the Fisher-Price recorder, and I would record myself doing stories, or I would do my own reports on planets or whales or whatever I wanted.
That's funny.
And my parents would be like, so
That's awesome.
you didn't have to do this, you just wanted to do this. And they'd find these tapes of me just, like, reading off facts about Saturn. That's
Pretty
it.
funny.
I love
I
it.
was pretty young. And then with the recording, yeah, like, I called into the Fox a few times to try to get, like, that song I wanted next. And I got in a couple times, like, yeah, it's coming up soon. And I'd sit there waiting for it. And, like, this song was a request. And I
It's
think
time.
Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me by
no way.
U2. And I needed it because it was for my mix I was making. And I think that was in, like, a Batman movie.
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
yeah.
Oh, I forgot about
I
that.
had the Batman mugs.
Forever.
Batman
Yeah,
Forever,
and I had the
wasn't
matching
They
mug
had the
from-
mugs.
from McDonald's.
Yeah.
I totally
still
forgot
got the
about
mug.
that.
It's a great U2 song because
really
it's so different from what they were doing otherwise. And at the age I was, it was just like, oh, this is such a cool, vibey song. And I got it on the tape.
That's
And
cool.
yeah,
That's awesome.
those are
I
some
love
early
stories
memories.
about. I love stories like that because I do miss that's one thing that I think that, like, I hope people are still doing. I mean, now I guess the new mixtape is a playlist, so it's creating playlists for
Yeah.
people, right? Like, that you
Yeah.
care about, and you can share playlists, and I do that. And my daughter's got the most phenomenal. Both my girls have a playlist. It's phenomenal. They've actually introduced me to music that I didn't even know that I would
That's
ever
awesome.
love. That I love, and I can't believe, like, the other day we were singing. You know, we sing every day together. And my girls are 7 and 3, so I was like, what do you want to sing? They're like, Better Now by Post Malone. So we sang Better Now by Post Malone. And then what do we follow up with? Holy by Justin Bieber. Then we followed up with One Direction, Steal My Girl. And then we went, and I love them all. And yet, like, it's hilarious because I probably would have been embarrassed to say that when I was in a band with guys that it was all about, like, you guys got to listen to this band. It's so technical. It's this, you got to, and I almost felt embarrassed to say that I liked some of the really just simple, easy music that I liked.
Yeah.
And so I didn't actually share it because I was, like, embarrassed because these guys were, like, crazy tech. Like, yeah, I remember even getting, like, super bored hearing them talk about, like it wasn't just good enough to have, like, a wicked delay pedal. It was like, well, what guts does it have inside? And what transits? I'm like, dude, I just need it to delay.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I was that guy, like, whereas, like, again, like, I learned, like, everything I learned was by ear, and then I would, to further it, then I would do, like, on, like, tutorials or ask for help or get, like, some kind of a lesson, right? But I wasn't, I would sit down, even, like, it was interesting because my mom just brought over an old keyboard that I had as a little kid and plugged it in. It's so funny because we put batteries in it, and you turn on, you hear it go, and it gets the pump going. So when you press it, it goes, and it plays, like, the notes. And so today I was at work and she sends me a message. She's like, "Listen, Dad," and she's playing "Happy Birthday" and figuring it out on her own. Like, on the
That's
keyboard.
awesome.
And I'm like, "Oh, this is so fun! Like, it's so cool to like see that." And I just think that it's like, actually, I'm gonna skip that and go right into like, because I wanted to talk about like, we wanted to talk about what the future is gonna look like, and I wanted to go there because going back to one of the things that you mentioned about like video games, I think it's so cool that you went to video games first, because that's not necessarily where people go when they think of like a memory of music and where it goes. We'll go to something else, but we won't go to a video game. Whereas I think we should be thinking of those things in the same way that we're now going to see people thinking of things like TikTok as the place where they discovered something new. Like there's artists that I follow on TikTok that are they're just up and coming. No one really knows about them, and I love following stuff, and they'll go live and just play stuff, and I feel like I'm having this intimate little moment with them. And I sometimes think like, man, can you imagine if it was like, we'll say U2, right? Where it's like Bono is like sitting down and
Just
he's like, I
sitting
mean,
there
he's always
diddling.
admitted he's terrible, but if he's just noodling live on a Friday night and it's just me and 3,000 other people watching, or even 100 people, I would be like, holy shit, this is unbelievable. And it just got me thinking that like, it's interesting how, like, why is it sometimes as musicians, we do say like, well, it's got to be this way, or it's got to be this way. Whereas like two of the best concerts that I've watched in the last 2 weeks with my daughter, both my daughters, was Miley Cyrus on TikTok and Justin Bieber on TikTok. And they
It's crazy.
both set records, I believe. I wanted to do the research before coming in because I wanted to talk about this, because I wanted, like, now that like things are changing, especially with COVID and live shows and what things are looking at, and even coming into a recording studio and what a recording studio experience looks like. I think that the future, like, it's endless, it's open of what things can look like, what music can be, where it can be played, what a live show can look like. Yeah, and I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on like just especially even just thinking, like, hearing something like, I think it was like 50. Oh, I can't say the number because I'm going to butcher it, but Justin Bieber set a record for how many people
Watch
That's
this
nuts.
live on TikTok
stream
for
content.
free.
That's crazy, yeah. Or even those Fortnite concerts those guys
Yeah.
are doing, right? Like
Was it Travis Scott?
Travis Scott and
Yeah,
There's
Marshmello.
Marshmallow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty smart, right? Because there's so many people using those apps, and
Yeah.
like people keep saying to me too, you got to start writing stuff for TikTok, and it's kind of funny how there's always like the resistance to like the new app. Like I was on Instagram for so long, and I was like, I don't want to do Instagram, and then eventually I finally went on it, and I'm like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
There's so much like value to it.
I'm getting worse and worse now. It's like every time something comes up and it's just like, don't talk to me about that. It's like, and then I finally I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool.
It's
Yeah.
so, I'm glad you said that, because we have like a really close friend, and that he said that same thing. He's like, I'm the guy that's like, it's just bullshit. And then 3 months later, he's like, hey, you guys heard of TikTok?
Yeah.
Like, he's like, and it's so good. I laughed so hard because I'm like, oh man, I love that. Because I think actually one of the things that's really, really exciting for me is having like a resource like you, and getting on top of the game, like and that's the cool thing is how you're saying, like, he's been teaching you things and you've been teaching him and stuff, but like knowing full well too where it's going to be used. Because you were mentioning that the song that meant and had a massive impact to you was in Final Fantasy. So that would have not been, you wouldn't have been listening to that through a crazy expensive, it would have been through either a TV or on something else that
on
you've
our
been
old
doing.
Tube TV, yeah.
Exactly. Whereas a lot of people now, like there's kids that are like, have family subscriptions to Apple Arcade. There's like ones that have PlayStation. And like it's opening up all these areas. So should we be, and it's, oh man, I would get crucified if I'd ever said this to like during the band, but when it was like, when they'd be saying you have to have this insanely expensive piece of gear or the album will be shit. Is that the case anymore?
I don't think that was ever the case. Honestly, I think that's. Oh, and forgive me. I think that's something that every group, every person, every professional in every field does and goes through that. And then it's like after a while you kind of get to the point of like, oh, that guy's a really good carpenter, just give him a saw, like a hand saw and whatever, and he'll build anything and it'll look great because he's a good
That's a really good
carpenter.
point,
It's
yeah.
you don't need the gear. It's like
There is something-
we the nicer microphones, they do sound better, but
Yeah.
like we said last time when we were talking, it's you still get really good recordings out of simple microphones. You you don't have to have it.
It
Obviously,
goes back to that performance thing in the
it's
70s.
how you use it.
Was it a really good take? Did it capture a really
Yeah.
authentic take? Then did it really matter if the microphone was worth $5 or $5,000? Well, the $5 one probably won't sound great, but
I do feel like if I'm playing like a better set of drums or a nicer guitar, like I feel like I'm playing better, and it's not just because it's nicer. It's just like there's
Are you
more
sure?
bounce.
Are you sure?
More bounce to- I'm sure. Oh yeah, because I play shitty
Instruments are a
kits.
little bit. There's a threshold of
Yeah.
entrance.
Yeah, like
for
it-
instruments.
It
'cause-
doesn't mean you have to spend $2,000 on a guitar. Like if you find like Dave Stone's been finding like guitars for way cheaper and like just upgrading them, right? So you can definitely spend less and get something that's good. Just like TVs, right? Like spend $2,000, you can still get a TV that's pretty good for like $1,200, right?
But have you seen those videos where the guys play like Rage Against the Machine on the Fisher Price drums and guitars and stuff like that? Like they're kids' toys and they sit there like it doesn't sound great, but like those are children's toys. And
I do know that there's like a level of like.
Obviously, like that's a joking around kind of thing, but you can achieve
like,
anything.
I know what you
point,
mean though.
though.
Like I love the analogy that you had of like that. It's like, the person building your home, like he's gifted and phenomenally. So when you give him any tool, sure, it might not sometimes even take
Might be
as he might not be
easier.
able to do as quickly, or it might not be like the cuts might not be as good. But he's still, you can look and appreciate, and go, holy shit, like that guy's like incredibly
sense.
good, right? Like, and I think that's too like where. Sometimes like we do get hung up on like I remember we're like, oh guys, we gotta rent this, and then we gotta get this, and then years later now I think about it, I'm like, well, did we though? Because if the guys are listening to it on TikTok, like I literally those two concerts that I watched were with my daughters on my phone through my phone speaker, and we loved it, right? And there's other things that I want to talk about too as to why I actually liked it and where I think, because I want to hear where you guys even think with like live music, like where it's going, because we now have like a culture where we're used to being able to engage, and that's something that even with these podcasts, like I really hope people that are viewing at home getting an opportunity to hopefully gain some knowledge and some insight and learn from our experiences, and I want to hear from them.
Yeah, reach
so if
out,
they have
ask
questions
questions.
and they have this, like you've got resources, and all of us are like open books that we want to share
Yeah.
with them.
We need topics.
I like
What do you want us to talk
the
about?
the technology meaning the artist meaning the tool at play. Like, okay, I like the carpenter analogy. So
Yeah.
the guy's great with a saw, but do you think he'd build a house without using electric tools?
No.
It'd be silly. So as an artist, it's a similar thing. Like
Yes.
maybe you don't need the top of the line gear, but it's a balance
Yeah,
between
there you go.
Yeah.
It
you
is.
need a
It
good
is.
take. We talked about actually, Dave, like you were kind of a purist because I'm a late to the comer DJ. I was a keyboardist first. I did sound recording. I did everything else, and my gear had that sync button, and I had to pick great songs to play. And I'm like, should I just sit there and slave away and spend all my time matching these beats manually, or should I spend more time performing, finding the right song to come on to the right crowd next? And like you said, unless you had a show that's for technical DJs, your dancing crowd doesn't care how I got from
Yeah.
song A to
No,
song
they're
B.
not. They're not standing there like they're at a DMC competition. They don't care.
Yeah.
You're not juggling beats on vinyl. Like,
But that took time for people when a new technology comes around. It's a lot like the new recording processes or these new formats. Like the guys who, when we were growing up, who were like, oh, MP3, it's never going to last. But it's like that became
Mini
the new
discs.
thing. Yeah, there's always that new format for music.
that was short lived.
I had a mini disc.
I had a
recorder.
mini disc player. Well, my brother
I
did.
remember I love that thing, man.
So which one of
It
these
was great.
social media apps is going to be that new step in between, and then the new thing that breaks through and everyone just gets exposed to new music or performances with something that we don't know about yet?
No, so that's one of the things that I was thinking about is that like my daughters were really excited when Miley Cyrus was performing for me to say something to her. And the fact that they got to see on the screen that we were saying something to Miley. So
Totally.
they felt this connection to Miley. And I was like, oh my goodness, it was just this like moment, this light bulb moment of, as a performer, when I was performing, I always wanted our audience to feel like they were a part of the experience.
That's a good
That
point.
I wasn't singing at them and I wasn't singing over them. I was singing with them, and I wanted them to be a part of it. And so how could we do that? And it always felt like there was this disconnect. So like there would be times where like, I would intentionally, if I was doing something, I would bring it up and I would turn to the crowd to let them see so they were a part of what I was doing. So that it was almost like you're doing this with me. Or I'd go into the audience to be with them so that they understood it was like breaking that barrier of like, we're just standing on a stage and this and that. But again, you know, when you have pedals and stuff to touch, you're always like, shit, I got to get back in time to like click all the pedals and everything. But there was this level of watching my girls be like, okay, doing a heart emoji and say, hi, Miley. And like, you know, that, and they're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we just said something to Miley. And they felt like there was this, we instantly engaged. And it got me thinking like, holy shit, like what could live shows be now where now the audience really legit. And when Justin was like doing his performance, there was moments like where it was just awkward. He was like kind of talking, but it felt, I was like, oh, this is kind of nice. Cause it was like not
Scripted.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was,
cool.
and he's just going, and I didn't care what gear was this. I didn't care about the angles. I didn't care about the lighting this. And I just felt like, oh, cool. He's actually like,
It's real.
it
It's
felt
raw.
real. So that
It's-
got me thinking that it was like everything that we've been saying about like, you know, people saying, well, oh, well, we have no live shows right now. It's like, clearly that just proved
And
that
I
wrong.
think the people without that kind of raw talent are going to rise to the top. Who are you going to watch? The ones who are just with no, like you say, the no makeup on, no filters, no whatever, no tricks, and they
Yeah.
still perform
Yeah.
so well.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa,
But
that's
it's-
raw talent.
It's also what you said though too, right? Is where it's like, do you spend the time? And this is the whole aspect. I remember thinking about this as well. Is like, do I spend 10,000 hours mastering how to record my album on my own, or do I click a button that helps me to sync?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like,
Use your technology to your
because though
favor.
you nailed it. Is that you were saying the opportunity to engage the audience and make them feel a part of it was just as much an instrument and a tool as was the actual element. And I think that you're right. Like there is, like I remember like playing the shittiest of acoustics and just being like, my fingers are burning. And like even at like the house, I have a Taylor that we have like for the girls that we have like on one level that they play. And I remember it's just not like I haven't set it up in a while and it doesn't feel right. I was like, man, my fingers are just hurting playing this thing. So I took it downstairs and I brought this Gretsch back upstairs, this hollow body Gretsch. It's gorgeous and it plays like, but I'm like, man, I can play this for days. Like, and it's like, so there is a clear difference
Yeah.
between. And so when you're in the studio wanting to make clean takes and have things feeling right, and also my big thing is that I've always believed that you want instruments that don't hinder to me. I can only speak from my experience.
Absolutely. On
I
that
don't
point.
want, I want what's in here to come out.
Without having to stress about where, like, if there's any little thing, it's like, I wish.
Yeah.
If then it.
And I
takes
know guys
away.
will say, that's why I have to have the expensive amp, and that's why I have to have this. And you're like, okay, I get it. I
which,
know where
which
you're coming
makes,
from.
which is totally.
I get it,
valid,
and
too.
teach their own. I think that like ultimately, what I hope people are hearing from this is that it's all up to you, and ultimately, there's some unbelievable tracks that I listen to that I actually didn't think at all sonically about how the tones sounded or anything. I just was like, this is a great song, and it made me feel something.
Yeah.
And I loved it, and I realized that like, okay, that's cool, and I wish that I would have let go of some of that stuff as well, even like because I remember being like, oh, you can't play like a tubeless amp at all. Don't even come close to touching it. Like, pause.
Yeah, I gotta go pee. So
Oh.
I thought it was the tube amp comment.
I
I'm
know, I was
Matt,
like,
don't
there's
talk
a
about-
big
I was like, there's
story.
a soft spot here that we don't want to talk about with tubeless amps.
Whoa.
like,
Yeah,
I just want to
I'm just going to keep it rolling.
Yeah, might as well.
might as well, man.
I just want to make sure.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Two Pals Beer. They have officially not sponsored our podcast, but they are one of our great friends. So please, next time that you're looking for a what?
refreshing,
What would it be?
Refresh crispy beer.
crispy beer.
What was I
With a
going to say
pal
there? A
at a
fresh,
distance.
refreshing. Yeah. When you want to drink and not have your friends smell it on your breath, you want a Two Pals Beer.
Yeah.
Well, that was from Seinfeld. I think it was like Hennigan's or something.
Yeah.
Hennigan's goes down smooth, and your friends will not know that you took a drink.
Do you like liquid? Do you especially like it when it hits your
There
mouth?
was a stand-up I was watching. Who was it? Who talked about how a flask is such a funny present to give to somebody because, like, you look like a guy who could use some open liquor on you at all times.
Yes.
Driving anywhere, flask, scotch. I was like, that's a pretty good point to give
Yeah.
a flask as a gift like that.
What's interesting is I remember wanting a flask, thinking it'd be the most badass thing ever, and then I got one, and then I remember thinking, I gotta use a little funnel to put the alcohol.
Yeah,
in
it's
it.
difficult.
I gotta really think through my choice to what.
And there's no mix with it. Like,
No,
whatever
and I
you're
was
putting
like,
in is just,
okay. I just remember thinking like, oh, I gotta really premeditate where I'm gonna drink hidden.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to do this. Like, it just was like, it's too much time, too much effort.
too
but-
much work.
for flasking it up.
Oh man.
Do you want another
Flask.
beer?
I will have one. Yeah.
There you go.
Today's unofficial sponsor of our Pineapple Podcast is Two Pals Beer. Social distancing with my pal. Thank you, Two Pals. Cheers. Okay, so let's bust into just a quick little side note. During COVID, what's your favorite place to get takeout? We'll give some shout outs to some local amazing businesses.
Yeah, what's the best? What's the one we've been doing the most?
Ooh, that beer crack there. We got that sound effect on point.
Oh,
Put
this
that
is-
in the ad.
Get
This
that in
two
there.
pals, once it touches your lips,
That's gonna be
Frank,
the,
no
the
turning
tank.
back.
absolutely delicious.
Two pals. Once it hits your lips. Liquid.
Those
It just
pals
tastes
and those
better.
lips, Tyler. Those pals
Liquid.
and those lips.
Once that liquid touches.
Once that liquid gets in you, no, beer. It's in you to live.
Okay, man, what about you? Takeout.
Oh, okay. Well, I've been there's a place called Lost Tacos in Walnut Grove here. I've been eating there a lot.
It's awesome.
It's always tacos everywhere.
Are they fish or
I-
chicken?
Excuse me?
Fish or chicken tacos?
Barbacoa and yeah, barbacoa and pork.
Oh, pork.
Yeah, pork and beef always
It's
Okay.
awesome though.
love it. And then the other I've developed quite a noodle problem. And that started with Mr. Noodles and then being really bored and getting really creative with spices and making my own noodle concoctions. And then I actually never had ramen from a ramen place until about a month or two ago.
Madness.
And it is just my favorite. So there's Ramen Bella down in Langley.
Oh, they are
and
good.
it is unreal.
Where is that one again?
Right on the corner of
The one way.
Yeah.
Glover and Fraser Highway.
Yeah. Awesome.
And it's so good.
Awesome.
Yes.
How about you?
Annie and I have been getting SNL and Langley.
Yeah.
That was a goodie. Or Down to Earth.
That's just down the road.
Just up.
What's
in
that
Langley
one?
as well. It's like I guess I don't know. I'll butcher this, but it's like vegan food. But it's like I don't usually think I would like that. But there's great stuff. Like they got this nice vegan poutine, and they've got
I'm gonna try
peanut butter
that.
balls. I love peanut butter.
Yeah.
That's right.
I love peanut butter, man.
That's right behind. That's right behind the Browns in Walnut Grove there.
Oh,
Is it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Oh,
really good.
okay.
Yeah,
On
and they
the-
do takeout, and it's
Oh, that's
awesome.
cool.
And it's like so nice in there. Like
Yeah.
they did such a good job at the woodworking and the sides. It's like dragon scales.
Oh, that's very cool.
It's really cool.
It's a very Instagram friendly.
Yeah, go in there if
kind
you
of
want
place.
some hot picks.
Yeah.
Hot picks.
Hot picks.
Josh, what about you, man?
Well, I work at a restaurant, Hawthorne
Yeah.
and Clover. We're down the road from you. So I eat there all the time because I'm working and I
That's
get a
awesome.
discount. It's
That's
a
awesome.
bonus, but food's really good. Burgers, pastas, pizzas. We got noodles, Dave. We got noodles. Not ramen noodles, but pasta noodles for your noodle problem. And then seafood. If you guys like mussels, I don't know if you guys like mussels or not.
I
but
love
killer
mussels.
mussels.
Curry mussels.
Yeah, curry lime.
White wine sauce
Yeah.
mussels. Oh,
Delicious.
That's awesome.
They're
Not
from
for me.
Salt Spring Island.
No, not for you.
Not for me.
Really?
Never, or just
Well,
You should try.
no, I probably tried them a long time ago. My brain memory tells me I don't like them, and I don't like the texture of them, and I'm a baby with that stuff.
You just need to find the right
You should
sauce.
see me eat sushi. I'm like dynamite roll, beef teriyaki, chicken teriyaki. Very, very easy.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Where mine,
Where's yours?
ours is easy. The girls, anytime, it's always the Italian. In
Oh,
Walnut Grove.
just up there.
Yeah, the girls
That place is
every time it's like,
amazing.
"Hey guys, where would you like to get some food?" And it's like hands down, every single time. The
And what
girls-
do you guys get from there?
Oh, everything is absolutely delicious there. But the girls love my girls when we would go there because we always just take out now, which we just it's phenomenal. And it's always delicious. Even the takeout's phenomenal. But the girls would love to watch their pizza get made, so they thought that was just amazing in the pizza oven.
Yeah.
And so they get pizza, and then my daughter's figured out that she loves to take her pizza and then put the spaghetti on the pizza and eat it together as one. So that's her big thing.
Oh wow.
And everything they have there's phenomenal. So that's been the go-to like that we go to. But I don't even get to choose anywhere else because SNL is phenomenal as well. And there's so many I also get the pleasure of I've shot at so many other restaurants. Like there's the Wooden Spoon in White Rock, which is phenomenal.
Delicious. Good
And,
brunch.
Yeah, and even Hawthorne, there's so many amazing places to get food that when I ask the girls, I'm like, hey, you guys want to try something new? They're like the Italian?
Yeah.
And I'm like, All right, and of course, man, like to me, it's like I love seeing them enjoy it as well, and so they feel like it's their restaurant, and I
That's
think that's
cool.
one of the cool things to me. So I always like, I mean, how rad is it that like you got 4 of us that all enjoy someplace different, and especially during this time, it's been neat to see. Even I've asked like friends and stuff and family members, like, so where are you guys going to? And just hearing the different places pop up, I'm like, man, I didn't even know some of these places existed in our community.
Has
So-
anyone
Oh.
ever been to Elizabeth's
No.
in
Never even-
Cloverdale?
Oh, that's
Is that on the
oldest-
main drag?
Yeah.
The schnitzel place.
Schnitzel place.
My
So
parents
good.
went on a date there, and I think like the 1970s or the 80s. It's the same restaurant.
It's awesome. Yeah, I love schnitzels.
I think my wife was just saying that her grandma they used to drive out of their way to come for schnitzel.
At that place. It's
Yeah.
famous.
That's
Old school.
hilarious.
You know what's? I mean, we're speaking about Cloverdale. I was filming for downtown Cloverdale, and it's like such a cool little character. Like,
It
there's
is.
so many amazing people, so many character places in there. And I was at the Stampede Tack, and like, if you've ever like needed a moment just to escape, and go to this like, it feels like you're walking into Disneyland. That's the place. And I walk in there, and it was so neat because. I was doing some filming. I needed somebody to like be in the shot for me, and I wanted it to look like authentic. And this woman walks in, and it reminded me much how like actually your wife dresses or my wife dresses like. And I was like, oh, she's perfect. Like walking through, so I kind of followed her. And I was like, well, how can I not be creepy? But like,
Yeah.
so I walk. I'm like, excuse me. I was like, first of all, like, and my daughter's taught me this as well. Is like to just sometimes it's just nice to compliment somebody. And I was like, first of all, your outfit looks wicked. And second of all, I'm filming for, and I mentioned who I was filming for, and I said, is it okay? And instantly she was like, yes. And I was like, whoa, she said it so quickly. And she's like, I've been coming here. She works in the movie industry. And she was actually coming.
Was she working on that John Cena film that's filming in Cloverdale?
She wouldn't say who she was working for, but she was working on multiple sets. And so she was the
Okay.
one that goes around getting like a lot of the clothing for the like people.
Oh, okay.
And she's like, my parents would drive as a kid all the way from Vancouver out to Cloverdale to take her to the Stampede Tack. Which is why she now, all these years later, still comes there and uses that as a resource to get things for different sets. And I was like,
That's
no
cool.
way. So it was so neat that like I got to then put her in a video that was actually
For Cloverdale.
just hyping up Cloverdale. It was like perfect, but I thought that is so neat that all these years later. So to hear Elizabeth and the story there, that's so cool because I don't know. I'm hoping that like the more and more that we all talk about the places we love, the more these businesses are not only going to be around, they're going to just continually thrive and just get bigger and better.
There's a lot of great places down there.
Yeah.
I grew up in Cloverdale, so I remember like we used to walk down there all the time. And if you go to the left past Stampede Tack, all the way to the railroad tracks there, we used to go and like walk along the tracks, Stand By Me style, and like there was like a creek bed. I remember it was just like literally like clay and mud. We just go and like slide around and just play and
No way.
mess around. Yeah, so
I've only
awesome.
gotten to know about Cloverdale like just because of not only working there, but I mean, like it literally is a gateway. Like you kind of come in
It's
from all
such
these.
an influential old school town, like
crazy.
that railroad station
Yeah.
and the business, like back in like the, I think 1800s. It was like the place.
The railroad
Around.
station's a pub now, right?
There's one right next to it. That's the Clydesdale.
Okay,
And
but yeah,
behind
right
it,
in
there's that
in there though.
Right behind it is
Okay.
is a railroad station that's like old school.
Where Annie's Store of the Heart is. That used to be the gas station there.
Yeah,
was a
that
big
makes
gas-
sense actually. Where
yeah.
like how it kind of looks for like the pulling.
And that little where the planters
Yeah,
are,
yeah.
that was like the pumps, I
That's
guess.
so cool.
And before all those stores were put in, you remember when it was joysticks and paddles?
No,
It
I
was
don't
like a
remember.
giant video store.
Really?
Yeah, there was like they.
That's a
switched it-
great name, by the way.
Joysticks and paddles.
It turned into an adult-themed nightclub for a while.
yeah, totally. You know, I was a Willow Video guy myself.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
Willow Video.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
staple. That's a
That's
classic.
a Willow Video. Everyone loves Willow Video.
All its
Thank you,
locations.
Willow Video.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Probably where we got Final Fantasy VII from, right, Tyler?
Yeah, pretty much. I just want to go back to that story. One of the first times Josh came over, because I used to like to weird my friends out, like just see if I can, I don't know, just show them who I was right away. So, Josh,
There's a filter. If they didn't last,
they didn't
you know.
last, then they're not ready for me. So Josh should be like sitting beside me, and I'm playing Final Fantasy, and he's watching the screen, and I just kind of like gradually just creepily turn my head and be like,
And stare silently.
Okay, but were you
And then just go back.
were you still really doing
still
well?
playing, yeah,
Oh,
still
yeah,
playing,
oh.
and just like I don't know how well I was doing. It's not you just walking around, but I just kept doing it, like looking at him for a while. I think another friend, I did the same thing. I just kept grabbing his leg out of nowhere. Like, you weirdo.
You're like, it's bizarre. I don't know why I struggled with friends growing
Yeah,
up.
I never made any friends.
I don't understand. Like, nobody liked these weird things.
I just really liked Final Fantasy VII, so I was like,
That's what he said.
I'll put up
Yeah.
with the weird guy.
He pushed through it pretty much.
Yeah.
We got over that.
Oh man.
That's awesome.
Let's talk about recording at home growing.
Okay. How far it's come.
Do you
Well,
record
we-
at
we
home a lot,
touched-
Dave?
Yeah. Not
all,
fair.
all the time.
Oh, okay.
No, you touched on that a little bit with the talking about stuff being on YouTube and learning.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, I find it's
It's come a long
just
way.
such a resource to be able to learn and like have accessibility to learn first off how to do those kind of things, but then technology's gotten a lot cheaper, so
Yeah.
it's
There's not much you can't ask YouTube now, you know?
no.
Like,
So for the person that's sitting at home that's like watching this, that wants to start recording, what would you suggest? Like, what's their first step?
I just whatever you have available, first off, and then if you don't have what you need available, whatever your budget can afford, just to get your foot in the door, because you'll as we were talking about before, the certain bar of entry for gear or
Yeah.
being
A professional
So-
DAW, right? Versus like we're always talking
Yeah.
about Logic and Cubase and Pro Tools, but
Well,
so if
and
someone
then
has nothing, could they just use like a totally free program
Yeah.
to learn the basics?
They can, and that's going back to what we were talking about the microphones. If you have a really cheap microphone versus a really expensive microphone, it's there's always going to be something better. There's always going to be something better, and there'll always be that little bit in there that's like, if I get the better one, it will sound better, and it will, like, hands down. The better piece of gear is better, and the better program has better features. It's always like that. But the most important step in anything is just to get started doing it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what, because your first few times doing anything, it's not going to be the best because you're just learning. And at that point, like, there's no point in holding off for the better thing when you could be learning using a
free program.
whatever's
Shareware.
affordable, whether it's cheap or free or anything. Like, if you get your foot in the door and you start learning, and then you can learn what features you want.
Yeah.
You can learn what it is you're even looking for when you're searching to upgrade or do something different or whatever, or even if you find out you don't like it.
and a lot of the DAWs offer free trials. DAW Digital Audio Workspace.
Workstation, I think.
Well, one of the two. DAW. DAW.
I totally know what it is. I'm just not gonna say.
Yeah,
But it's,
yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to see if you guys knew the answer.
You're like,
it's-
these guys.
I honestly didn't know what you're talking about. I was like, I'm gonna just let him explain.
Yeah, that's
that
how I was
one.
like, I wonder if people know what DAW is, but
Yeah.
it's just basically where you can record in, and there's tons of free ones. A lot of like audio interfaces.
Pro Tools, Logic,
Yeah.
Ableton.
Heck, man, grab your
Cubase.
parents. If your parents have a MacBook, just hop on GarageBand and start playing.
GarageBand's it just comes with your Mac.
Yeah.
If you have a Mac, that's all you need to get started.
And a lot of the time, so the way so you'll have your computer, right? And then you'll need a way to get the audio into that computer, so you get like an audio interface, right? And a lot of those,
Like a little box.
just a little box, and they can be anywhere from, used from $50 to like thousands of dollars, right? You don't have to spend a lot, but a lot of them will come with like a free version of a DAW, right? That you can get started. That's how I got started, right? I got the interface, and it came with the light trial version or a light version.
That's a good
And
idea.
then you just get cracking with that, and then it'll limit how many tracks you can do. But
How many inputs did it have for you at first time?
just two, right?
So like
just
you'd hook up
two in,
a
two out.
microphone, like a microphone cable and a
Yeah,
guitar cable.
and a guitar, and then you can plug in, like nowadays too, you just use a USB cable for like your keyboard, so you don't even have to go through the interface, right? And then you can play MIDI controlling
pretty cool.
VSTs.
Well,
right?
even easier than using an interface if you don't like. That's if you get an interface, then you also need a microphone to add onto it. But if you have a computer with let's say GarageBand, or you could download, what is it? It's not Sony. It's one of those.
Sonar.
No. It's
SoundForge?
like back in the like Acid Pro, and
Yeah,
then there was,
yeah.
but there's
Oh, I
there's
forgot
another
about
one.
those.
There's Reaper.
Well, I use SoundForge a
There's
lot. Acid
there's
Pro.
a free one. There's a free one. I can't remember what it is. Anyways, one of those that you can get for free, essentially, or use a demo, and then just get a USB microphone, and then you don't even need an audio interface at that
Yeah.
point. You just plug in your USB microphone, and it's as simple and direct in. Generally, if you're gonna run guitar straight into your computer, you'd need an interface to put an instrument in, but hey, if you got a microphone, you can just mic your guitar then, and it's one less thing you have to buy.
But at the same time, if you're gonna get into it and you are gonna spend a little bit of money, like it's not a lot more to get something like that, and you'll put you a step ahead, right? Because sometimes I found where I'd get something, and then I'd be like, oh, I should have done this, or like, oh, I wish I just put a little bit extra in and just got that instead, when it wasn't even a big jump, right? And I think like there's been tons of times where I've gone from like the 2-input one, then I'm on the 4-input one, and then I'm like, oh, I should have just got.
Well, I guess it depends what kind of musician you are.
Yeah,
If you're a
yeah.
vocalist and all you're going to be doing is recording your vocals, I can't see any reason why you'd need any more than a USB microphone just because that's all you're recording.
That's a good point.
Possibly. That's, and then there is a point to that. If you want to set up really nice speakers, generally you need to have like XLR outputs, which would require an interface. But if you're going to listen on headphones and you just want a microphone to get your voice into it, and maybe you're just doing scratch tracks or learning or just doing it for fun, like that's all you really need. If you're a guitar player or something like that, you'd probably want an interface so that you can DI
for the high
which is
Z,
direct
high Z input.
direct input or direct injection. I can't even remember anymore. It's one
Which
of
is
those.
I realized that I was
Back to
staring at
school.
you
Back
quite
to book.
intently for a long time, so we may have to cut that part out. I'll totally be honest, man. I remember being on the road touring, and so my experience with recording was that I've always loved it. Like I said, like going back to like all what you were talking about earlier with that Roland old Viest, whatever it was, and like just it was such a shit experience, horrible. Wasn't easy to do, and then once you figured it out, you'd actually screw up and be like, oh, I don't know how I did that, but that was awesome. I don't know how to replicate it. Like, it was just so difficult. So when we were touring, I was like, I'm always writing. To this day, I still am writing. You know, I sing like every single night that I put my girls to bed, I sing them lullabies. It's the lullabies that I've only written for them. They're the only ones. They haven't given me permission yet to actually even release them. They're gorgeous songs. I can't wait to release them. But I've written them with them. And so I realized, to me, I wanted to be able to utilize it as a tool to get out my ideas, but in more than just a scratch track or just like a little idea way. Like, I wanted to be able to add some textures to it and play around. And so when I was on the road, I was always singing into my phone, constantly. My phone is full to this day still of like all my ideas and stuff.
Like voice memos?
Yep, just because I knew I had them there. I could write, I could have this. And so when I was a little kid, I remember waking up in the night to music that was in my head in my dreams, and I would have to sing it into something. So I remember I'd have to like in the middle of the night, and like it's still something to this day that it's always going in my head. So when I was on the road touring, I had an iPad, and that iPad I was running out just to my headphones that came with the iPad, and then I had a MIDI controlled keyboard that I had plugged into my iPad, and I was using the GarageBand that was in there, and I created, because it was so freaking easy, so many things on there that actually spawned going and taking it to the next level, and you were able to even export some of what I had created to take to the next level, because it was like, I didn't want it, for me, this is me talking as a musician, I didn't want the idea to hit and then be like, okay, so now what do I do?
Oh, that's the worst.
I forgot which plugin. And then I'm like, wait, what was the idea again? And now the idea is gone. I want it to be something. And so I think you're right. I think that like, there's like what we're talking about is, first of all, getting to like, well, what do you want to do? Are you the person that like, you know, played trombone that now wants to actually maybe look at this possibility of doing it as a career because you're so pumped about it? Well, maybe you should do a bit of research around this area and get in touch with you. And maybe it's like you're kind of midway and you want to talk to you. It's like, or maybe you just want to, you know, like, actually, I just have a bunch of ideas I just want to get out of my head, and I want a cool way to be able to add some drums to it and add this because I just want to get an idea of what it could sound like, because I'm actually just wanting to sell my songs to other artists or be a co-writer. You know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
I think there's so many different
Maybe they're
levels.
making a video game and they need the soundtrack to their own video
Totally.
game.
Right? It's like, or I'm writing a podcast, little intro song or something, and so I only want to just have some fun. I think that like it's important to evaluate even where you're at financially and look at like, okay, well, I don't have all this crazy money to, because you're right, there was lots of times where we're like, well, we don't have the money for this, so we get this, and like literally there we are 3 weeks later trading it in, going, we should have just gotten that
Yeah,
one,
like,
and
damn
a bit
it.
of, a
But
bit
you
of,
don't. But you don't know at the time. There's no.
no. And sometimes it's like you can do the research and still not know.
No.
And you got to learn that way. But I think that like you're right. Like it's easier than ever to set up a home studio and to actually make really decent sounding stuff at home. But there is the one thing that I know for myself, even doing an entire album myself, I am not a professional full-time recording engineer, producer. Like I love producing stuff. I always have. There's a big difference when someone knows, even how we're talking like, off camera, and we talked about like, say like sonically in a song, there's wave files, and that's the waves of like the where things sit. Where does a kick drum sit? Where does a snare sit? Where do the vocals sit? Where does this? And I remember my first recording, everything consumed everything, and it was like, oh, you can't even hear me. And then I was like, why can't you hear my vocals? And I didn't know the education of where things needed to sit. How to equalize, how to like even like realize that we mentioned this in the last podcast, how my really expensive guitar that like amp that I got was actually kind of useless because it was like I never ended up touring with it. It was just too much. But yet it was amazing on its own when I played by myself in my room. And like, or in the studio alone cranked. It was the greatest, but like not as a, and I think those are the things too that like all of my journey of recording, which is so nothing compared to you guys, but it was like I learned along these those. It was just trial and error with a lot of things, and then asking people like, "How did you do that?" Like,
Yeah.
And then I just am thankful that people like you guys will share those things, because it is a lot of like, I don't know why we have industry secrets, because nobody's gonna do something. Nobody hears the world like you hear it, or like you hear it, or how I hear it, which is why I get so freaking annoyed when I'm listening to a song and I feel like that tambourine just cannot shut up.
Yeah.
It's so loud, and somebody else says, "I don't even hear it."
Well, I want more.
Right? But that's what I mean, though.
Yeah,
Like, we're all different.
Everybody's so different with
that's
it.
the thing. So that's why, like, even like when you're first getting started, it's like, well, why? Like, what do you want to use this for? And to me, it was always a tool, an extension of, I just wanted to be able to get out my thoughts and my ideas, because also as like melodies have always come easy to me. I've always loved writing melodies since I was a kid. So actually a lot of my stuff, I would sing multiple parts of vocals to get the textures. So I actually wanted to have something that gave me the opportunity to have more than 2 tracks, where I could do my textures with my voice just to hear where it was going to go, and then I'd build from there.
That
So-
that kind of when you were talking about earlier, looking up the stuff on YouTube, and then the people were like, "Oh, you did it that way," or
Yeah,
kind of thing. That kind of goes into it, and this by no means is like a don't look things up on YouTube and learn, because you should. Like I do it all the time with everything, but it's the double-edged sword to all that has become the thing is like, everybody's a YouTube expert on everything now, right?
true,
So
yeah.
it's like, I look up, rather than calling in a professional for anything, like I sit and I look at things on YouTube and go, oh, I know how to do it now, and it's it can bite you in the ass sometimes too, because you don't really know what
Yeah.
you're doing with a lot of stuff, and you, like, it comes from experience. It comes from
Making
trying
mistakes.
things over and
Yeah.
over again, and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of hurt some industries in a way too, because you have so many people doing DIY stuff, and not just music and recording. Because actually, I don't think it's hurt music, to be totally honest, because I think it's changed music, because
it
people
brought more people interested in it. If you could do it at home, it's no longer this mystical place. You could only do it in the studio.
It's not the major labels
The gatekeeper.
domain is a gatekeeper of like, only these people make records. It's like everybody makes records. Like, if you have a laptop, you can do it in your room.
Well, look at Billie Eilish and Phineas.
Exactly,
What they were able to
that
do,
kind
right?
of thing. That kind of thing. But there's different aspects of those. There's a lot of producers who they make the beats on their laptops, and they don't even need an audio interface.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Like
if you're making
they
beats,
have a USB microphone, and they're doing that. But
Even no
they
microphone.
take it up to a certain point though, and just because you can produce a really really good song doesn't necessarily mean you're good at mixing. Or if you're good at mixing, you might not be good at producing songs. I'm
Or
not
arranging.
very
you don't know how to arrange the song.
Yeah,
the same way
there's
a composer would.
everybody's got their little different things, and
What's your thing? Yeah.
it's I think especially with music, I think a lot of and this goes to the whole home recording thing. I think a lot of people kind of get very in their head about, I'm doing this. This is my project, and they get is don't look at music as this like one man band thing that you have to have like that. Outsource. Like if you can focus more on your craft and what you're good at, and like I know how to master songs, but I don't know how to master songs. Me personally, I don't know how to master songs as good as the guy I use for mastering.
Sweet sound.
And I ship stuff out to him because it's just he does. I don't have to spend the time doing it, and it comes back better than I would do it, and I can focus more on mixing and making the next song and all that kind of stuff. And I think home recording is you know your limits and work within those because
Play within it.
there's and play within it. the there's so much you can do at home, but there is limitations with it, and
I think
you can get really lost down the rabbit hole of like trying to learn things that are maybe not the best time spent trying to learn, possibly.
I think there's so much, like you said, there's so much you can do just on a laptop without an interface making beats, and even with stuff like sounds.com and splice.com now, right, where it's a subscription service with all these great loops and samples, and you can put like the key, you can put the BPN, what instrument, and keywords, and like build a song like that, so you don't even have to have like theory anymore. And like there still is something to building up beats like that, like it still is taking all these pieces, putting them together into something that no one would have made, right? So it's pretty cool how you can just kind of build it up that way now, right?
I think one of the cool things for me is that I believe that it's such a cool thing to see people that may have never thought of even giving music a go in their own life, giving music a go.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's had such an impact in my life. It's been such a healing thing in my life. It's been such an exposing thing in my life. It's been such a painful thing in my life at times. Like there's so many emotions that I've had around music and what it's done for me, but it's always been there. And there's, what do they say? It's like to me, like music is always, it's been such a soundtrack to my life. Like, and I think that there's so many people, like I'll never forget the first time I ever taught somebody how to play guitar that was a mathematician.
Oh, okay.
And I remember just sitting up and like, oh shit, I can't teach you the way that I learned how to play because you want to learn in numbers. But it made me better because I had to go home and learn about numbers, putting numbers to things that I just did because I just did them because I love the way it felt and the way that it sounded. And it didn't make sense to this person that I was teaching. I had to teach them so like with numbers and stuff. And it was cool hearing that person's music, because they viewed music as math. Unbelievable. It was so cool to me. So to me, like that's why I like that there is the opportunity to have a home studio for people that are like him, like this mathematician that like, he may never like go on to like actually be a professional musician, but he's able to like, what if it helps him through a time in his life when he needed that help? And so to me, like I've often thought, like I love YouTube. I am on it all the time. I search it for so much stuff. I agree that you do have to be careful because everybody's a master on there, and so you're not quite sure.
I need some subscribers. Hit the like button, everybody.
Yeah, so you're never quite sure like what you're getting. So there is a lot of trial and error, but at the same time, I also believe that it's such a tool of wealth when it comes to being able to use it for like just for the simplicity of being like, yeah, I just want to. Like I remember hearing a story of a guy. It's like, oh, I just thought I'd ever want to do an album, and I was like, oh yeah, I kind of felt that same thing too, right? Like when I was like, I wonder if I could do a whole album because I'm not great at like I'm not a professional mixer and I'm not a professional this like I did professional performing, but I didn't ever be the guy in the studio. Like we always hired somebody for that. So to me, it's like, can I do this? Like, can I actually
Yeah.
like? And I realized how bad I was at a lot of things, but I wanted to do it as like kind of one of those like, give it a go and like have fun doing it and stuff.
So, like, the first song versus the last song on the album, is the first song, did you go back and with all the lessons you learned and try to
Yes.
fix it up? You didn't just be like,
I love
it
that
starts
trick.
shitty and ends great. Like, you had to go back, you learned all
I
your
did.
lessons.
I went back. Well, I went back because I realized there was a lot of things that like as you went, I'm like, why didn't I just do that earlier? And so, yeah, no, I did go back and I did learn my lessons of listening to the wrong people on YouTube or this and that, where it's like, oh, why did I do that? Like that actually made it more challenging later to mix it because this guy was saying to do this. And so again, sometimes people just don't want to spend the time to learn those things. But I get excited about tools like YouTube that like I've always believed that there's enough to go around. I think that like I don't think it's actually hurt businesses. I think it's benefited businesses. I think
Totally.
that YouTube has been a place that I think if you own a business, you should be on there. And I think that there's multiple reasons for that. Because I think that when you give away, I've always believed in like when you care for humanity, when you give, it comes back to you. And so I think that like my reasoning for that is because I believe that like, what are your core values as a business, as like, as a brand, whatever it may be. And to me, I've been learning more about how like your core values are qualities in action. So if trust is one of those things that's a core value to you, then what does trust look like in action? And it's like, to me, I'd rather, and I think this is why, like, even for me, I look at the people that I love and I support, like the Italian, okay? So like we were just talking about places to go out that I love and my family loves them. And I ask my little girls, why do you love it so much? Like, I love this, and they'll go through the things that like, every time it's amazing for them. There's an experience. Number one, it's an experience for my girls. And so what does that look like then for businesses on YouTube? It's like, well, I remember reading this story about this guy that like they built up their YouTube channel of just giving stuff away for free, like knowledge, all of the knowledge in there and just giving it away, and built up their subscribers. They hadn't asked anybody to buy anything. But when it was time to release, like, say, a book or something along those lines, the people that had been subscribing, there was millions now to this point, they had built a relationship of trust. So there was a level of trust there, which was a core value, obviously, of this person. Some people actually had been getting it for free that I bet you they felt even a little bit guilty, like, well, you've given me so much stuff for free. I've learned so much from you that I kind of owe it to you to buy the book, which I've been there and done that for people. There's many reasons, but all of a sudden now you've got this opportunity where, yeah, now this guy on YouTube is making like a good amount of money and a good living, but he started giving it all away for free. So I think people get really nervous of giving things away for free because they're just like, well, I'm giving away my trade secrets. I'm giving away this.
That brings me to like this big argument we had with our couch cushion band that I got into it with the manager was, so the price of the music, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Couch Cushion Fortress, Tyler
Yeah.
and I in the band. And I got this huge fight with him because he's trying to put the business model together, and we talked about how much we all love Radiohead. They had the model, it made sense for them, where the music is technically free, it's by donation. And there's technically no minimum, but at the same time, there's no maximum.
Yeah.
That one guy might just be like, you changed my life, here's $200, and that kid who got the music for free might show my music to 200 different people. Like, why am I only charging $1 a song? Like, what's the going rate for the thousands of hours I've learned and practiced? I put this music out there. Here's your 30 cents for the song. Oh, thank you very much. It's like, how about I just give it away at that point? Like, we don't need to sell our album for that minimum. I want to know maximum. Like, if someone wants to donate down the line because they trust us, they love us, they'd come see us live, like...
Donations kind of funny because I find people are people are more willing to part with their money when they don't have to and they appreciate what they're getting, rather than being like, oh, that's what you set the price at. They're like, well,
You're standing on the street corner trying to sell your CDs for $5
if
to all
you
the
say
people.
this costs $10, they're like, I don't know. And you're like, this is free. You can donate. You're like, here's 15.
Exactly. Like, why would you say no maximum? Like, let people give what they want to give to support you, but they're not going to do that if they don't trust you. They don't know you. Like, it's a building a
Yeah,
relationship.
I remember that. Oh, were you going to say something?
Well, I was gonna say, if you're getting married, do that with your drinks. Like, you'll make more money. That's what we did.
What's
It's
that?
By donation, don't like
the
charge.
bar.
instead of the Toonie bar, right?
Yeah, by donation. Some people will be like, $100, there you go, I love you.
Yeah. No, but it is interesting because it's thinking a little differently, right? And realizing too that like we fear a lot of times, like we've been doing things a certain way, so we believe that that's the way that we should continue to do things, versus realizing like there's enough to go around. And then also too, like, we've talked about this previously, like in the podcast, about just being you. And people will be attracted to you in not only, we get fixated. There's too many thoughts going through my mind. We get fixated so much in our culture about what we do, and so when you ask somebody, well, who are you? They'll a lot of times introduce all the things that they do, when that's not what I'm, asking, or that's not what we want to know. We want to connect with you. We want to get to know you, which is why I know for myself, like I would research bands when I was younger. Like I was like, oh, like you want to get to know, or why, like there's some people like, oh, I'm just such a diehard, like, because they feel they know the person. And when you feel you know the person, and this is the essential thing, is that like, now my marketing hat comes on where it's like, okay, so if I feel I know you and I go to your social media, so now Tyler, like I'm talking to you right now, you're a great guy. If I go to your social and I'm like, that's not the dude that I
don't
know.
recognize that.
And then
He's
I go
wearing
to,
so many top hats.
And then I go, yeah, he's wearing
Yeah.
so many top hats.
Why?
All at once.
So fancy.
And then I go to your other like social channels and I see that you're different there as well. Then I'm like, well, maybe I don't know him.
Yeah.
So there's no trust. So that trust right off the top is because it's not fluid throughout all. I want to get to know who you are because I already know you put out great music. So I already know what you do is great, but I want to get to know you more because there's more going on to my decision making when it comes to where I'm going to spend my money than just
Totally.
one dimension, right? There's like a emotional connection. There's an internal, connection. There's a philosophical connection. Like there's many things going on, and so we want to get to know who you are. And that's one aspect of why, like, when people are generous, when they give away things, like a lot of people get so scared. They're like, I'm not giving away my trade secrets. It's like, nobody's is going to be you. So nobody's going to be another Pineapple Sound. Nobody's going to be like, it's because each one of us hears things and we see things and we view the world completely differently. And that's even going back to like giving it away. Like I remember when Radiohead did that. And I remember kind of like, we chatted about it as a band as well. And I remember that our drummer was like, we just got to give away our music for free. And it was so like, well, yeah, but.
Because of that mindset of like the albums had to be sold and there's a middleman and that infrastructure that you guys were brought into and you're getting signed and there's all these people that have to get paid and we can't not sell it for at least $20 at HMV. Like, what do you mean? Like, we're never going to make money on that. It's like, well, actually you could make money giving away the music because the artist at that time, depending on the deal, they might just be paying back that giant debt from that $750,000 recording. That's why their music had to be at least $20 a pop, and you needed to sell this many. And
yeah, no, and that's why I think that like it's important to have like, that's amazing that you actually had that conversation, that you shared that, because there is a lot of fear still around. Like I'll never forget, I read this little story about like I believe it was like Da Vinci or something, and he was having, I think I might have shared this with you guys, so stop me if I have, but he was like having coffee. And he was just sketching like on his like little napkin, and this woman like looks over and she's like, she knew exactly who it was, and she's like, holy, and she's watching him sketch, and it's phenomenal, of course, like it's absolutely phenomenal. And so it's got his coffee stains and he's just sketching. When he's done, he takes his last sip and he gets up and he picks up and he goes to crinkle it and goes to throw it away, and she stops. She's like, no. She's like, stop. And she's like, can I have that, or can I like buy it off you? And he's like, what? And she's like, that like doodle, like that's unbelievable. Like, can I have it off you? Like, and he's like, she's like, can I buy it off you? He's like, sure. She's like, how much? And he just thinks about it for a second. He's like, $20,000. And she's like, what are you talking about, $20,000? She's like, you literally I just watched you sketch it like in 30 seconds. He goes, that took me 60 years. And it was so cool. Like, I remember like being like, oh,
Totally,
like,
right?
It was such a like, oh yeah, like all those times. And so that fear then too, because we're like, well, I spent 10,000 hours learning how to play my guitar. Like, I can't give it away for free.
Yeah.
And then you realize, like, wait a minute, like that's where it is nice to have. At the time, I remember even like doing research with YouTube. It's like, okay, I remember after one of the meetings with the band, it was like, giving it away for free. I'm like, actually, that's a kind of a cool thought. It's like to give it. So where could we then get it back? And then it was like, I'm just do some research then. Like, where can you get it back, right? Like, and then it doesn't look like. That's why I love how this podcast started. Was you saying that you're going back to a video game, like, which is why we were so excited to get our music onto a video game.
That must have been awesome.
Because of how much we knew it would get spun, or how much it's getting used. You know the songs that are trending on TikTok that are being used for the videos? How many freaking times they're getting spun on TikTok, and people are just getting it into them and they're using them, and other people are remixing them and putting them back on. And like,
Totally.
the world has so many more opportunities for artists to make money than ever. And you can start at any time in your life. That's one of the greatest things, is gone are those stupid shit days of like, sorry, you got to be 19 years old and a really good looking blah. It's like you can start your career at 50 and make a wicked ass like chunk of money if you felt like it, like finding the right community. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier about being you.
Yeah.
Just fucking be you.
Totally.
I get so passionate about it because I was so sick of the fact that I wish that I would have been more me. Just been me.
Yeah.
so someone I saw, I got exposed to, was watching Luke Cage on Netflix. Awesome music, by the way. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that one. But one of the main like characters in the show is the fact that the bad guys have this like music venue in Harlem. So there's all these cool scenes of like the hero guy beating up all the bad guys while they're like simultaneously auditioning some act behind the stage, or they're performing some people. And Charles Bradley was there, and I'd never heard of Charles Bradley before. He's the guy. See how that song Changes? I think that's on the theme song for that puberty show I didn't watch, Big Mouth.
Never seen that either.
Oh, the puberty show. Good one.
Yeah, Big Mouth.
I know that show though.
Yeah, so Charles Bradley, apparently, if I'm getting the story right, he started way later in life. He sounds like a guy who's been singing his entire life. Famous soul, Motown, like, he must have been around since the 60s. Like, no, he started, like, really, really late in life.
That's so cool.
It was the same with Quincy Jones. He started later in life, too. From what I heard.
Quincy Jones?
Fact check, yeah. Like, he was, like, a bit older when he actually started producing or whatever. 'Cause he did Michael Jackson, right?
Yeah, but he's been doing music though.
Oh yeah, but I just remember reading something. Well, the fact check, I could be wrong, but I just remember he's one of those guys. Like I was looking up quotes at one point where it's like, you don't have to start young. Like you can start later in life.
Like
and
Morgan
still...
Freeman's first gigs, he was already over 40.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, where like someone's not being held back nowadays. Like all the technology's in front of them, they could just try it out, see if it works.
Something interesting, like a kind of a segue out of that into the next thing would be like, now with all these social media platforms, is it going to amplify how it used to be, like we were talking about comparing yourself to like other musicians and other bands and other artists, right? Like now it's easier to kind of put stuff up and control what they show, right? And people only like to show the best parts of them for the most part. Is it going to happen more? You know what I mean? Because that was always a tough part. You hard to find camaraderie with other bands when you feel like they're taking away from your piece of the pie.
Yeah, it's such a like dipshit way of thinking of things.
Yeah.
We thought of it all the time too. Like it was this competitive, like, you know, if somebody liked your band, shit, we just lost a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, why did we ever think like that?
Right.
Like, and it's interesting because like, you know, we do know that comparison is the thief of true joy, and absolutely 100%, it robbed us of some of just the joy because we were comparing. Or like how you're saying, like when you go to a show and you're like, oh man, this place sounds really good. Or it's like, oh dude, why is the bass so loud? Like,
yeah.
You know, when you go and you realize like, just let it, like it's so hard to sometimes turn off, but I realized like the joy that I would feel when I was younger and just sit by this, like just look at the stage and be like, oh, that is just so amazing.
I loved when I could see the set list on the
Oh,
guitar.
yeah.
That was
But
such a cool little
I just was
secret.
like in awe of like what it did to my soul, and it fed my life, and it just like it made, like it literally made moments in me that like I felt like it was like, oh, that just changed my DNA. Like it just like amazing moments. And then like as like we were in the band, I remember just hating the fact that like there was just so much competition and so much comparing and so much like this. And I remember like I was talking to you on the phone today. I was just saying that like I just wish that like there would be like when I remember people talking about like, oh, the music community is so good. I was like, well, that's bullshit because I have no idea what that music community is. Because my thing I realized early on too is that what that meant to people was you could be a part of my community if you brought value to my community.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about you being you and just being, oh, it's great to have another musician around or just another human being.
Bringing to the table?
It was like, if you're going to be here, then I want you need to have to bring something to the table. So I remember like having an issue. Like I hated having to, when somebody said, oh, you really need to schmooze this person. I was like, schmooze this person? What are you talking about? Like, you really like, this person could put your stuff on the radio. I was like, so I got to schmooze? I'm like, what do you mean? Like kiss their ass? They're like, oh yeah, you're going to want, and I watched that person change from the person that I knew to go do it in front of them. And I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Like, and then I was like, and I remember coming home and telling my wife, I was like, she's like, how did it go? And I was like, well, that was shit. Cause I just can't do, I'm not that kind of a person. And like, but it's like, but I felt that it was like, well, if they're doing it, and then I watched people do it and get further because I was comparing instead of just enjoying my own journey and being more of who I was and letting like the chips fall. I think that's what I wish somebody would have just told me.
Do you think
more.
that guy would have liked to meet the real you and be like, wow, this guy's actually not kissing my ass?
That's what I think now.
That's what I always
stood
did a
out.
lot of schmoozing, but I just acted like me with schmoozing. I just went and made friends. Schmoozing it's just networking in my eyes.
I know,
It's
but
just
what if
going
you're
out
quiet and you're like, see, that's the thing too that I have a hard time with is that like, what
Yeah,
it is
that's-
the loud person then gets like where to go, and I have a hard time with that because
That's
like I
hard.
I wasn't out there I'm not the selly guy. right? So like that was like, so then it was like, I remember even like, we talk about the community of bands. It's like, oh, there was a great community. I'm like, really? Because we didn't go get hammered with you. So then you guys made fun of us, and then you never talked to us because we didn't get hammered. So now we were the lame. And I remember hearing this is like, well, you're the lame band that like, doesn't go get drunk and blah, blah. And you didn't want to do drugs with us in the back. And you got mad at me when I was snorting coke off the back of your amp. And it was like, but so then I feel isolated. And like, obviously too, I'm not just pointing the blame on them. I know there's a lot of shit that I was trying to figure out who I was. Like, and obviously too, like with things like, your prefrontal cortex not even being fully developed. I was really legit trying to figure out who I was. And so you throw in all these things of like, well, you got to be like this and you got to be this and you got to sound like that. You got to look like that. You got to schmooze that guy. You got to do this. I'm like, can I just have a friend?
Yeah.
Like, that's not needing me for anything. Like, I remember, like, somebody being like, yeah, like, kind of almost feeling like a bit of a connection. Like, yeah, I can be friends with you. But it was literally to use me as a songwriter.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I don't mind joining communities and writing with other people. Like, that was exciting to me. But it wasn't, I didn't want it to be the only thing was, so you only want me around because you want to use me for songwriting. So really, we're like, and I think that's like, I don't know what I'm saying here, but
Here's
it was
melody dealer.
Yeah.
He only shows up when he needs melodies.
Yeah, but I do have a really, really hard time because of like things like, you're right, like being yourself, like schmoozing is networking or whatever like that, but networking was fucking kissing people's asses. And I have a very hard time. Nobody should ever be in a position of power like that and make somebody feel like they have to lick their ass to get to where they want to be. If you're that person, you're a dickhead.
Of making people
Yes.
do that.
Yeah.
Because you enjoy it, and that for us, I saw that, and that made me not want to do it even more because
there's a lot of that out there.
I couldn't give it to them because my heart hurt for those, like, I love that there's the gentle souls that make amazingly beautiful music. And I wasn't it's interesting because you'd think as a lead singer and even the way that I talk and stuff, I've learned that like there's extrovert, there's introvert, and there's like, you can be anything in here. Mm-hmm. It's not one or the other. I was always told you're one or the other. So I struggled with like, well, I guess, like
that's the student athlete versus musician again. Like
it's like
one or the other. There's no gray area.
It's weird, but then I learned years later that like I remember listening to psychologists speak, and it was like, no, you can be in the middle, and it's like, and I remember like when it was like go time, I was like, okay, like I could turn it on, but then I needed to like really come back because at home I'd like to dial it back, like, and again too, you'll change over time. Like maybe when you're younger, you're more this way, and you'll change, but. I just think of those people that are quiet, that were just amazing people. I remember meeting people on tours and all sorts of this. And like, there is no way that they would ever be that loud voice to go kiss that person's ass and stuff. So they're going to be like, nothing of who they are even then is important because it's like, well, you didn't kiss their ass. And it's like, and I would feel that for them. And I felt it for myself too, because I'm like, I am not going to go up to you and pretend like you're God's gift to something because you happen to control one radio station in northern British Columbia.
Yeah.
But I'm supposed to kiss your ass because you're gonna make my career.
I hate that stuff.
I hated it.
I hate those when people say that to us, like, this is gonna be so good for you. It's like, okay, thanks.
Yeah. I hated it. Like, anyways, I'm kind of being negative there, but I'm also sharing with you, like, clearly, like, there was a lot of insecurities I had at the time as well and stuff, and like, and I was learning a lot of things, and like, I'm not just blaming them. But I do think that there's like a lot of aspects of like when you're in that position, when you actually are in a position to help, how rad would it have been to be actually a guide in our lives versus being the hero that we all have to get to like you really are the gatekeeper. Like without you, like my career will never be. And it's interesting because I look at it now, I'm like, man, I could have said no to absolutely all of that and just still gone this way. And it's like, you had nothing, but I stressed about it. I was worried about it. I compared. I watched other bands.
And in the end, it didn't make any difference at all.
No difference at all.
So I think to kind of bring it around, like, you can focus on, rather than comparing someone and being like, oh, that guy's younger. Remember we talked about how you'd been working forever and the guy next to you like played guitar for 3 months.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Rather than be like, what can I learn from that guy? Like all these people out there, like there's a million channels and a million artists, and it's gonna be hard to find those authentic ones for you to learn from. But rather than compare and be jealous, I guess you just have to be like, well, how do they do that? That's pretty cool.
Inspired by something about what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like
there's got to be something they're doing.
And celebrate each other. We don't celebrate people
the thing.
enough, right? We don't get excited about other people, and we don't encourage other people, and like genuinely want to see people succeed. Like there is enough to go around.
Yeah.
Right? And when you realize that, like, I didn't like just one band. You're right. Like there was times where I fixated on, like we talked about Daft Punk. Oh my goodness. Like I loved that out. Like I loved it, and I just played it so much that I was like, I gotta really quit.
Yeah.
But that's okay because I did that with so many artists.
Was Daft Punk the one that had the video with the dog, the guy in the dog suit, and they're like walking around LA?
Was that back in the day?
Is
that was an older one, right?
From the 90s, yeah. I forget what song it was, but it like had that weird video, and that's what I think. I'm pretty sure it's a Daft Punk song. How I got exposed to them because it's this guy and this like it looks
Yeah,
like
maybe.
a
Is it
Around the
Teenage
World?
Mutant Ninja Turtles. Maybe it's Around the World, and he looks like it's a weird
No, those were all
That was the-
cartoons.
because there's a guy in the dog mask, and he
No,
just
it's
kind of
harder,
meets his
better,
old friend
faster,
from
stronger. Never
school,
mind.
and it's just the most bizarre video. But I was like, what is this? And then that was how I got into electronic
Yeah.
music, was seeing that music video.
But that's the thing is that like we all liked tons of bands. There's enough room to go around
Yeah.
for all of them. So why did we think that like when you gained a fan or even and now that's the problem is like we'll look at things on social media and like I would love it if Instagram did and there was talks about them getting rid of it, but if they got rid of follower counts, like counts, all that stuff, because your real community will engage with you if you have a real community. If you don't have a real community, they will not engage with you. And so to me, I know that there's like it's interesting. Some people get so fixated on that little dopamine release that they get when it's like, bing, you got 50 likes on this. It's like, oh sweet, that's the greatest post I've ever like written. It's like, well, how about just letting people just be themselves
Totally.
and letting your community grow and fall in love with you for who you are, and then also the fact that like besides who you are, you also do something really cool, but they're getting a chance to know who you are. And like that's the one aspect of like where I think I'm excited to see music go is the opportunity to get to know artists even more on a deeper personal
Totally.
level beyond their music, in an engaging way. We're able to have conversations now because that's something going back to that TikTok like originally at the beginning that we talked about that my girls thought was so cool that I thought, oh, this is so cool, right? Like seeing them at their age of 7 and 3 feel like they just got to talk to Miley.
You'd never see that side of Miley Cyrus when you're reading the back of the the tape cassette fold out kind of thing, right?
Yeah, like you get the
she's-
music is the same. You're like, this is awesome. But you don't
she's
get
a
that
face, and you got the lyrics, and then there's the music, and that's it.
And that's why I think that like, man, the potential for growth and the potential for where, especially even during this time that there's all these brilliant minds like thinking like, how can we like, there's this awesome, like you guys were showing me that awesome place that you can, play live at.
Oh, yeah,
And
the
it's like,
Coop.
and during
The
this
Coop.
time, it's like, so how about like, if the opportunity comes up to be able to play and to perform live, but as you're live, you're taking breaks where you're engaging and talking in between, and now you're talking back and forth, and now the people are like, oh my goodness, I'm a part of this.
That's a cool idea.
Right, and it's like now it's taking it beyond, even during COVID, where you're like, I'm a part of this, because like, can you imagine how rad it had been back in the day? Let's talk about Radiohead because we were talking about them. So, I remember when my wife and I moved to Oxford, and one of the first things I wanted to go to is I wanted to go to like
See where they all met.
yeah,
Did
I
they sit
wanted
at this
to go.
bar? Where did he write Creep?
I
Was
did
this-
get to go to
was
one of
this
the. I was like, they're
stool?
like, okay, our friends were like, yeah, they play here and blah, blah, and they live in this area. And I just remember being so pumped about it and being like, oh wow, so clubs are even gross looking,
Yeah,
across the
even
other side of the world. Like,
My feet still stick.
but can you imagine if like they played a show and you were one of 100 people that was watching them live play, and you were texting back and forth and like taking your time, which is valuable, their time, which is valuable. They're playing their songs from their heart, and you're getting to talk to them. They're like, oh, actually, no, my favorite color was this, but I changed. And you're like, oh, like you're getting a chance. Like, yeah, I love going, and you're getting to know them. And now this, what COVID sometimes people think is there's not as much intimacy. Is I actually think that this is shone a light on like that how much
It's a shared experience.
Oh.
Everyone is, no matter what you were doing before, unfortunately now, things are probably a little bit different for you. So you had to make some changes.
But everything evolves and everything changes, and like, and celebrating each other and like encouraging each other. And like, I get more excited now than ever for bands, for up and coming artists, like just because of all the things. Like, I really do believe, like, man, like when you told me, you're like, yeah, we knew of you guys, like, and I was just like, oh, I wish at one point I would just been like, hi, how's it going?
Yeah, I
and
wish we
talk to
did
you. I was like,
too.
I can't believe, because I think of it now, I'm like, what I would have given for just one friend outside of the band, and I think the bandmates would have loved you guys.
Yeah, we
and like
would.
to actually have a community where it's just great guys that want to see each other succeed in a healthy, positive way, and not in a competitive like, well, you're taking away from us. It's like, no, we actually do, like, what can I do to help? You want to borrow my gear? Like, if something happens, you want this, like,
If we
whatever.
do a
'cause
big show together,
we
whose
want
bass
to
amp
see you
do we use?
succeed,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's just, I'm so done with the competitive stuff. Like, it's just,
Crabs in a bucket.
It doesn't help anybody.
no,
No,
not at all.
no.
But it's weird how we fix it. And maybe it's our insecurities. Maybe it's I don't know what it is, but
I found the more I started to kind of like learn my instrument and my voice, I started to kind of gain like a confidence and you know, get a little bit out of my shell and care less a little bit. And I think once I felt confident and like in myself, and it was a little easier to compare less, you know, because I think that the whole time when I'm comparing and being like, oh, like there's one singer in a band from Seattle called Richelieu, and
They stayed with us after a show one time.
Yeah,
We
and
gave them our place to stay. They were an awesome band.
yeah, so good, like really good. But I remember like one of my favorite singers is Maynard James Keenan from Tool, and I like he's one of the guys who I definitely modeled my voice off of. And this guy did that even better. I remember being like, man, he's really good, and like, or even my
He
drummer,
doesn't get my good pillow tonight.
yeah, bastard, right? And yeah, awesome guys though. But and it's funny, we were able to break through that because we found Flight of the Conchords together, so we were all watching.
Flight of the
We just
Conchords.
watched that all night. We're like, oh, this is amazing.
Flight of the Conchords is awesome.
But it's just funny how like even naturally, like even like
Did
somebody.
we even
who you
take
like,
a roll call this morning, guys? That we're all here?
Yeah, we're all here.
Okay.
We're all here.
Roll call.
Business time.
But yeah, I found with even with that I was able to kind of move past. But once it took me being confident in myself and not really caring about anything else and being like, oh, you know what, I can do my own thing and be happy with that. And then also listening to other people, not thinking I know better than everybody, right? Because that's hard to get away from. Because you write something a certain way.
You're
and
so
like,
happy and confident, and you think, this is the final
Yeah.
cut. This song is perfect. Listen to my perfect song, everybody. And then that professional songwriter or producer will sit you down and be like, okay, well, how about this? And you're like, I didn't think about it that way. And then all of a sudden, you're like, oh, ho, ho, learning point, light bulbs. Like,
I find you go lack of confidence comparing,
overconfident.
and then you get, yeah, I know what I'm doing, and you're still learning, but you're so eager to feel that confidence
Yeah.
and like I know, and so you make up for your still learning by like putting the overconfidence in, and so then you like totally overcorrect the other way,
Yeah.
and then once you kind of get to a point of zen where you kind of like, I don't really care as much anymore. You're like, I just do me, and I'm happy with where I'm at, and I'm
Yeah.
continuing to grow from now on, and then you don't do that
Yeah.
so much anymore, and that's a
it's almost a tightrope though.
that's a tightrope, and that takes a long time to get there, no matter what it is, because you're always like, yeah, learning stuff is weird.
Well, it's like tightrope with imposter syndrome on each side, right? I'm like, oh, I'm doing good, I got this, and then it's like, oh, can I do this? Like,
So-
oh, is this good?
Matt, how many songs are on your album that you did all by yourself?
10 to 14 about.
So at which point do you think you had to, like, was it like song 8 or so when you're like, oh man, these first songs I gotta go back and do them? Because I remember with Tyler, like, we'd be doing an album and finding our voice and getting into the flow, and we're like, well, the first song we record, we can't keep those takes. We thought we worked so hard to build it
Yeah.
up, and we finally got there, and then you progress so much further, and then it's like, where's the cutting point? When do you just say you're done? Like, I had a hard time calling a song actually done.
I
That's the
did.
hardest.
I did too. Like I think like halfway through the album too, I realized like I think I was just so excited about writing parts that I was like, I don't need all these parts. And so once like I'd actually gone halfway through, I was like, I can take a lot of stuff out. So I did. I went back and took a lot out. But I've always known as well that like that's one of the like kind of cool things about being an artist is you have to live with a little bit of that. It's kind of something that I actually really enjoy is when the song's done. Regret.
Yeah.
It's not a word I like to use because I don't ever like I'm not saying I live in regret, but there is always that level of like, you know, I kind of think I could change that. I want to change it, but once it's printed, you're like, no, it's it, and we move on. And so
We
part
always
of me,
ran into the thing where all of a sudden we did the whole process, and then our band members would hate the songs and never want to play them again.
Oh, that's so
we spent
annoying.
thousands of dollars on this album, and we want to pump it up and show it to everyone. I'm like, oh no,
Yeah.
our newer songs are gonna be better. I don't like those songs anymore.
I think it just taught me to like, okay, regret might have been the wrong word, but you guys know what I mean. Like it
I
was more.
Totally. I
whatever
know
the
you-
word is for I
Acceptance.
have a
Acceptance
problem.
of-
I have a problem where I don't listen to songs once they're done. It's like
Yeah,
I'm
like,
like
you just kinda-
I'm
Is that
like I'm like, yeah, print, it's good enough.
The actor not
Like,
wanting to watch the movie.
Well,
or
no,
something?
because you can always like psychoanalyze it and go into it deeper, and it's like, is that really what I meant in that lyric? And I didn't mean that. And I actually had another lyric like 3 years ago that I knew I wanted to say at this point, but it didn't come out properly, and I didn't feel great this morning when I did that take. And so when I got up and then when I left, I didn't realize I was going to have that. And I needed this and this, and like there's every excuse in the book to go back and be like, we need to do this again, or we need to like blah blah. But like
you're never done.
no,
You've never done
so
it,
part of
though.
me thinks it's that there's a therapeutic thing in my life about, because I listen to every song I don't ever listen to my own music. In fact, I don't even think my daughters know much of my music because I just don't play it.
That's funny.
But there's something therapeutic to like learning how to like just be okay with it and to walk away and be like, yeah, at that point in my life, that reminds me at that time, that was who at the time I thought that was, and you just kind of let it be and you move on. Because I think every artist is going to go through, like, I think it's hilarious because I look at, somebody had a conversation with me once about like classic rock and how there's this resurgence of classic rock over the last 10 years. And how people that like are being, you know, I'll never forget when I told somebody that they're like, oh, like, you know, who's one of your greatest influences? And I was like, oh, I've always like really appreciated and looked up to like U2. Like I really enjoyed them. Like it was like, I remember for me, it's like if I could play guitar and sound like Johnny Greenwood, Lenny Kravitz, and Slash, like I was like, this is gonna be awesome. Never happened. But I was so excited about that, and they were like, who's U2? This person. I was like, wait, what? And it was like they're just so like young. They grew up with pop music. They just didn't know. And I am thankful that my parents growing up introduced me to everything from like the Beach Boys to the Beatles to Elvis Presley to like all this different classic rock. And I was thinking like, man, I wonder what, like, are we going to consider like some of the pop music classic? Like, will it be the new classic? Like, because we think of classic rock
pop.
but that's the thing, we'll say classic. But now the lines are so blurred that when you go, like, there used to be so many different categories of where bands were like, well, what are you? It's like, we're actually in this category.
Yeah.
Well, we're this. Again, labels that I think are shit that we shouldn't have in the first place. But like, so there probably may never be a classic rock label, obviously, ever again. But like, it is one of those things that you look at the longevity of songs. And that's why to me, I'm like, I actually remember saying like, I actually don't even care because to me, like right now in my life, I really love "Holy" by Justin Bieber. I'm not thinking about 20 years. Is it going to be a classic though? It's but right now I'm having a lot of fun dancing every night with my daughters to it. It's hilarious. We have a great time. It's a beautiful melody. We sing it, and then we'll go and sing Post Malone, and then we'll go and sing like, you know, something else, and we'll go and dance to this, and then we'll put on. Remember that song Iko Iko or whatever came on the other day, and I was like, oh, that's actually a good song. I forgot about that. Like I didn't even. I was too young to really remember it, but like it's a great song. Like put it on and dance, and it's like you just enjoy music for what it is. Because I don't look at art when I'm in a museum and think like, well, that one's not new enough.
Yeah, it's not
I
new.
just enjoy it for what it is because it's like, it impacts me. Like, I love art. And so I think that's one of the things, like, again, going back to like creating a community that I think is absolutely essential is from now on we stop thinking just me, and we start thinking like I often think like, man, like how much more we would have succeeded as a band, our band, just having some guys to come alongside and be like, you guys are doing great. Because that's all I really think about it now. I'm like, that's all I really... Like, I was getting it from my family. My family has always been the greatest cheerleaders. But I've always said, it's like, they love anything I do.
Same with my family.
So you don't... So I'd always be like, you don't count.
You know what I always loved was when you see a show and somehow at the very end of it, band members from the different bands came up and played together and you're like, whoa, they're all
That's
friends.
cool.
Like we saw the Mars Volta open up for Red Hot Chili Peppers and I love the Mars Volta so much,
Mars
but they
Volta
are
was
not
awesome.
an approachable music. It kind of goes to something, I want to talk more about it, but like, you kind of got to hear some songs more than once to like them. And if it's your first experience with a song and it's not approachable music, like, say, Mars Volta, I was looking around in the concert and everyone was, like, hating it. And I was loving it.
Yeah.
But then by the end, they did this wicked, Flea comes out and they do this drum and bass solo. It was insane and it was so long. And I was like, wow, that was such a cool thing. And then I find out, oh, he actually jams with them. And they were, you know, they do recording sessions together and they all respected
Cool.
each other musically. And they toured around as friends. I'm like, well, what a cool experience that would have been to just been a fly on the wall in the back when they're like,
So do you think that like the Chili Peppers knew what they were doing? Like, do you think that they thought, you know, we're helping these guys out? Like, because like obviously too, like think about that, man. Like they were established. They're unbelievable band. And like to be able to come out, it's almost like a way of easing people in, going like, these guys are. It's like a stamp of like, guys, just so you know, these guys are awesome.
yeah, like they're our
Right? 'Cause
friends. Give it
I
a
got
try.
into music because guys that I respected that were older than me, a good friend of mine, Harry, or not a good friend now, but like he was a good friend when I was growing up, Harry. I mentioned him earlier. He was just that much older that he introduced me to music I didn't know, and I was like, oh, if Harry loves it, I love it. And then I ended up loving it because he would like introduce me to these amazing bands, and forever I'm indebted to him introducing me to bands that I may not have never known, but they had his stamp of approval. He did it with such like, he was just excited too. He was never proud to be like, look who I, and you know how many times we've had people in our life like, look what I discovered. You're like, well, thank you very much. Like, but he wasn't. He just genuinely, and I think that's that kind of community, that cool stuff is like, yeah, you're right. Like, I think of like, I don't know if I could go back to all the festivals that we played, all the shows. It's like if there was like real community moments where it's like we just legit, there was no agendas, nothing. It was just to support each other. I don't know if did you guys ever have that?
No, I don't like. We
It was
had
a fine
few-
line. It was a fine line. Because we were young and the same. Our egos were in place.
Yeah.
And is that maybe that overconfidence, underconfidence line we're walking where we're like, well, we like these guys, but they're not as good as us. Like we gotta be nice to them, but we
Yeah,
like
like-
ourselves better because we have to. Otherwise, we have no self-esteem in our music.
Yeah. It's kind of like one of those you have to trick yourselves into think. Yeah, I feel like we were just pretty young too. Like just out of high school, and you're trying to figure yourself out.
Yeah.
Right. You're still, like plus like in relationships, like I think I was in a really long relationship just out of high school, so it was like navigating that too.
And a band is like a 5-way relationship.
It is.
And
Yeah.
you're like we definitely, going back to your first thing you mentioned last episode, was like we had different definitions of success by far.
Totally.
We did not not at all.
Do you remember that?
I now that a real light switch moment of like what I thought was very clear, all in the same path. Well, this is the road to go down. This is what we're doing. And it's like, well, the other guy is already sick of these songs. Why am I pushing so hard for this album and these things when it's like he just wants to create more music? His success was like that next big thing.
Yeah.
And big learning moments there. And when you see another band doing it, and you do get that jealousy of like, oh, they got to do this, and we wanted that show. Or
I still can't watch live shows. Not being jealous, but like I just want to play.
Yeah.
Like if I watch a live show, I find like I have a hard time enjoying it because I'm just like, oh, I want to be up there. Like it'd be so fun,
Oh, that's
And,
cool. I'm not there yet.
No, not as much like
No.
if it's like a big famous band that like I really like I don't get it as much then because I'm like, oh, wait.
Did you
for
get
the part.
nervous? Sorry, I totally cut you off there, but did you get nervous going up on
Before
stage?
Yes.
do you remember our first show we played at the high school theater, Tyler? And we had nothing mixed properly.
Josh
on
is
the
throwing
drums?
up in the back, crying over his
I got over the
bagpipes.
throwing up.
He's
and
like, my bagpipes.
Yeah.
Let him go.
That was it. We played at lunch in our school theater, and then
What school was that?
Clayton Heights.
Clean.
And we had our buddy Trevor,
Sounds
just really
fancy.
goofy dude. It was a nice school. He sat in the back in a fuzzy troll costume the entire time because we like Will Ferrell was like our favorite comedian, so we just like weird goofy stuff. And so he sat there just waiting the entire concert. Like I think it was like eight.
I thought it was like a cow costume.
It looked more. It's a fuzzy troll, but it wasn't fuzzy at all, and it looked like a cow more so. But he sat there the whole time.
So
Nobody
it's
got
a not fuzzy cow that,
Yeah.
that was a fuzzy troll.
But he sat there in silent behind us on a chair, dead face, with a cowbell and a stick in hand, just waiting. And then as soon as the show was over, we're like, all right, thanks, guys. We'll see you later. Head back to class. And we started playing this exit song for everyone to leave. And he just got up and was just giving her on the cowbell. Like, he just waited the entire show.
People thought he was in the band for years, though. Like, is Trevor still in the band?
Yeah, is he still playing cowbell
Oh,
for
that's
you guys?
awesome.
But
He
I
asked
used
for
to get,
writing credits.
yeah. I definitely got nervous, and I remember before shows, I didn't like talking to people. Like, I'd be like, just, I'm going to go sit in a spot and just
You
be
need
by
that green
myself.
room. Like a lot of shows
Yeah.
when you're playing in a band, it's like you're in the middle of your crowd and you're off to the side and like, oh, no, it's time for us to go up. Okay,
I
I'm
don't
gonna.
want my voice tired before I even sing, right?
Yeah.
But then as soon as I get up on stage, then it's gone. Like as soon as you're up there in front, it's kind of like, well, shit or get off the pot. You're here now, right? And I definitely would just have that excited feeling, right? Until if something went wrong, you get kind of like that nervous, like, oh, I'm gonna shit myself now.
How about you for on stage?
It's interesting as you're talking, it just kind of brought up I was trying to think of myself, like how I felt. And I know for myself, it was definitely my anxiety would be heightened, but in a healthy way. Like it wasn't, I don't remember being nervous. I remember more like,
Maybe anxiety is a better word for it.
I think like kind of going back to like the tribal sitting around the campfire and like, you know, your anxiety is heightened because you can hear like, oh, what's behind it? Like is something kind of trying to eat me? Like, and I kind of feel like that's what it was before shows. Like, my anxiety would perk up, but not in a negative way, in a good way. Like I felt like I was like really attuned. I was always very serious. Like I always wanted to like do my best for people
Yeah.
like that were out there. I felt like, man, they work hard for their money, and so I want to make sure that they leave and like, wow, they like I felt like really like a part of this and entertained. And so like yeah, I felt like everything would slow down. Like I mentioned in the last podcast, things would slow down. I'd hear everything. But I wasn't ever nervous, but I do know that I would be exhausted after the shows.
Yeah.
Like emotionally, everything drained out of me. Again, because I write from a very empathetic place, and I am still learning how to control that aspect. So it was a very emotional empathy. So like it was the dials were all the way up and then some. And so at the end of a show, like it legit felt like I had just gone through counseling sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I like, actually, that's one thing I was going to ask you, like, what kind of style of music? Like, for me, what I tended to write was, like, very emotional music. So it was like, when they're like, let's write a happy song, I'm like, okay, that's going to be a little bit more challenging. Because, like,
Yeah.
because it's weird. Like, it naturally, like, to write a love song for my girls or my wife, like, that's always been easy. I could write those every day, all day, no problem. But then the next emotion that I seemed to always gravitate to was, like, it was very heartfelt emotion of, it was other people. I wrote from a very empathetic place, from other people in my life I saw going through things, and I just cared for them deeply.
I did that too as well, for sure. Like
Yeah.
someone in your family is going through something, kind of write about that.
Yeah.
And I didn't get into lovey-dovey songs until like later.
Yeah,
Like
I never
when I
actually
met Annie.
I don't think I actually wrote like, anything for like live. They're like lovey-dovey songs.
Oh, no?
No.
That was like the beginning of Couch Cushion Fortress was a lot of that.
Yeah.
Actually, no. It started off like with my ex-girlfriend at the time, and like, okay, I'm done with this. And then falling out of love. And then when I met Annie, the songs turned to being like, oh, I'm in
That's
love
cool.
again. And then it was all happy, upbeat.
It was always I Want to Know What Love Is. That's
Yeah.
the song you guys call me. Like, stop covering that song.
It went
Why do
from-
we have to sing that every show?
It went from songs being like about desperation, or like I can't breathe without you here, and I can't sleep without you by my side. So like that was like that, and then to one song was like, there's just one thing I've been dying to tell you. You were the one who makes my heart pound. So like it went from being like friggin' like leave me alone to like, oh, you're the best, right? And that felt way better though.
Yeah, for many reasons, I would assume. Yeah.
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 Yeah, there's a lot of the. It's funny, like, I was in a relationship for 7 years that I probably should have finished at 4 years, right? 'Cause I
3
was-
more years you spent in
Yeah,
a relationship?
'cause I was
we
like-
could talk about that one for a long time.
I
eh?
was like, you keep thinking, oh, I gotta get better, and like I felt like guilty, and like you don't want to hurt someone's feelings, right? And even though like it was hurting you both in the long run, but yeah, I just remember like letting that one die a slow death, and finally, like I remember realizing a point, like it was all like if she would have listened to the words in the song, she could
Oh,
probably,
no.
like
You
like,
kept playing them for her, and you're like, how are you not
"How you not
hearing
hearing
this?
this?" Well, like, and if
Jeez.
it was mostly
This
like,
is my favorite new song I wrote for you. It's called Breaking Up.
yeah, yes.
She just didn't get
It's
it.
called, yeah. There's definitely some angry lyrics in like the heavier band. That one, some like she definitely didn't know those were about her. And then the Couch Cushion Fortress, we didn't end up like that. Didn't see the light of day until way after I'd ended up breaking up with her. And then
Oh,
so
okay.
she would have maybe heard him later and been like, "Oh, you son of a bitch."
But it was interesting though, from like the metal scene, they talk a lot about like your mental headspace. Like I think we talk about Maynard James Keenan a lot because we love his stuff. But he just stopped playing Perfect Circle songs live and performing with them as much because he couldn't handle it emotionally anymore. They were too personal, and he was up there exposing himself. And it's hard when you're like we were in really heavy music, and it was dark, it was full of energy, and
Yeah.
the crowds loved it. It was a lot of fun to make it, but it was draining in a real emotional way to be living in that world the whole time. Like you got to find a balance, I guess. Like
It is. It's draining. Sorry, you gonna say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, like putting yourself out there doing stuff like that is it's an emotional thing, and yeah, that's
Draining in its own way.
right.
It drained
Yeah.
me. Like, I mean, that's why I told you guys in the last podcast. Like, I got like really sick, and would just. It's funny because I'd always ask myself like, why am I? I'm not kidding. Like, if we had 5 shows in a week, I had strep throat every week.
And that was just because you were burning the candle at both
Just
ends
stressed beyond stress. I
emotionally.
think part of it was like understanding, yeah, like just stressed beyond stressed from a lot of stuff going on, like, and this is stuff that we'll talk about in like podcasts to come, of like even just dealing with like your own members of your band, the
How to get a
relationships,
balance, you know?
the relationships you're going through, where I write from, the people that I cared about most outside of the band and what they were going through, and then for me as well, like I mentioned, like you were talking about getting, like when you get on stage, like I would love to like get up in Wembley and play at Wembley. Like that was always a dream, like, you know, getting up and playing in those places and stuff. But it wasn't like that's what charges my batteries, right? Like that's not what I would look at. And so for me, all of those years, like sometimes I thought, no, that's what charges my batteries. And then yet I was getting sick all the time and realizing that like maybe it wasn't. And so what I wasn't doing was I wasn't allowing myself to have enough time to charge my batteries doing the things that actually charge my batteries, which was, again, going back to that introvert extrovert, my batteries are charged when I get to just chill and relax with my wife and like just be at home and be in my living room and relax. But when you're always depleting and depleting and depleting and depleting and never getting a chance to fill them up, that's why I was constantly sick, as I was never filling them up.
It's interesting.
And so I think that's where, like, instead of just being aware of that, it was like something else is going on. And then every time I would perform, I'm scraping the bottom of my soul, getting these like incredibly, like, because to me, I always viewed performing as it wasn't just about the lyrics and it was not just about the song, which is why, and I think you guys can like agree with this, that when you go see a live show, you're like, holy, because there's something different to it, because I felt that it was also, you were going to get a piece of my soul.
Yeah.
So when you were there, you were going to feel it. So from my body language, from like even my awkwardness to whatever, like whatever it may be, like I wanted it, the whole entire experience is what made up who I was. And that drained me. And so I think that like if there was something that maybe I would have changed, is maybe not, maybe just dial the empathy writing back.
Yeah.
Like, because then it would make, like, we had a song called Happy Hour that was like one of, like, it was just such a, like, we almost did it as a joke. We wrote it so quickly. Like, it was like, we need to write a fun beer drinking song. We wrote Happy Hour, and it ended up being this amazing song that like did incredibly well for us. That was like, we wrote way too easily, but it was just because it was so easy and it was just fun and it was just felt good. And it was
That's
just
probably
like,
a sign. Like it came together
yeah,
so easy.
I know. And I was like,
Wrote
and
it.
it's like, but and it's funny because you're like, oh yeah, like to play that one, you could play it all day. But then to play the other ones that we wrote, it was like, oh my goodness, like at the end of it, like I'd almost be losing my voice, but it wasn't because I couldn't sing the song. It was because it just, it's like when you've cried so much, like I just can't talk anymore. And that's where majority of my music came from, was that place. And I loved writing from that place because I felt like I was at times also being a voice for those that didn't have a voice.
Or, you know, when you're like, your life, you can't be happy all the time. You're just not. Like, those songs do have a spot to listen to. Like, I love putting on a great playlist to drive through when you gotta think through some stuff, right? You can't just listen to happy music all day.
Totally. And sometimes you can't listen to sad stuff because you're like, I don't want to cry right now.
Exactly.
Well, and I didn't, it's not like I intentionally went out and was like, oh, my life was like, you know, terrible or anything. Like I had a great upbringing, and like that was the thing we talked about, like as well, right? Like I had an amazing family, and like always had that weird dilemma of like someone saying, well, you don't have a story because like you don't have all this stuff. But like I care deeply for, there was like I know exactly who I'm talking about, and love this person with every piece of me, and what they were going through, I wrote as like from such a deeply empathetic place for this person that I would lament for this person while I was on, because of what they were going, because I cared for them so deeply. And so that's where you're writing, like how you said, like you're going through this bad breakup and you wrote from that place, and then also you're like, oh, it felt so much better to write from pure love, real love, you know. And like it's like, yeah. And so for me, like it just so happened that stretch where I was with this person with what they were going through also was at the time that we were also kind of blowing up, like whatever that may look like, kind of thing. So like the common theme kept being like, and I was like, oh, I gotta write like happier songs. But it wasn't that I didn't want to. It's just that like I know I'm an emotional, I'll admit it, I'm a very emotional person. It's also I just always have been, and it's one of the things I know makes me a good storyteller, makes me successful in what I do with our marketing agency and like listening to people. But I do know that like, yeah, I look at some of the stuff and I'm like, maybe that's why I don't miss playing those songs. I have a blast performing every night with my girls. Like that is like, I get like, that feels better than like some of the like crazy accomplishments that I was able to like do with like other bandmates, like playing on huge stages and stuff. Like, but I see them like, I've never in my life, whatever I've done, I've never felt so proud of myself as when I look at my girls and I see what they, and the pride that I feel of them doing something. And that to me makes me feel successful as
Yeah.
a dad. And so to me, like in life, I look at it and I look at where I want to go with music and stuff, and I just go like, man, I'm just like taking it in that these girls like that. She calls me today and plays happy like birthday on the, and they just want to. I have never pushed music on them. They can do whatever they
That's
want.
awesome.
I'm not gonna push music, and it actually, I realize it is feeding that level of like excitement to play and the excitement to write songs with them, and that's one aspect. I'm like, man, it's like I get excited, like you said, the difference of writing from an ending of a relationship to starting a pure real love relationship.
Yeah.
That's kind of like right now I feel like the songs that I would write obviously would be incredibly different,
Yeah.
and have been. So that was a
Yeah,
long rant.
there's so much to like how you're feeling when you're writing. There's so much to where you are when you're writing. Like we'd change from our rehearsal room to another house,
Yeah.
and then we'd write something totally different. It felt totally like it's just a total different style, even or
Yeah.
totally different feeling.
I love when we heard like a band that came out with a new album. I think I talked with you about this, Tyler. Back to like music being approachable. The first time you listen to it, you don't like their new sound. You're like, oh, that's different than the old album.
Yeah.
What happened? And then you hear it more and you realize these guys heard these songs in studio probably thousands of times
yeah.
while they edited it and made it, and they heard it again and again and again and again and again. And the final product is just, whoa, you had to hear it more than once. That's the key. Like, that's why the song sounds the
I got
way
that
it
with
does.
the Crow Left to the Murder from
Yeah,
Incubus.
the big departure. Like
Oh,
Radiohead did the same thing. OK Computer to Kid A. I
Oh.
put it in my thing and I listened to it on headphones and I wanted to love it on the first listen and I was like, well, that was different.
What about
Yeah.
Silverchair Diorama? That
Yeah,
was like
that was so
Have
different.
you guys heard that CD? That was like, who's
What?
this? And then at first I was
love
like,
Silverchair, man.
That
I love
opening
Silverchair.
song,
I
just
was
so
pissed
bold.
at first though, and I remember
Across the night.
Yeah, well, they went from being
You're
like heavy, like grunge, and I was like, that's what I fell in love with.
To, like,
and
art
then,
house rock.
And then like
yeah.
Across the
Art House. I haven't heard that in a long
Night.
time.
Just there's so I don't know. It's an amazing album.
It's great, and then I got addicted to it, and then there's so many layers to that, and it's all orchestral, and
Yeah.
it's just amazing.
Yeah.
But to be different, I guess you should never be afraid to like, okay, you made this one time. Is that the only thing you should create forever? Well, no. You should try a different genre or different feelings or
Evolve.
explore. How are you going to know what you're really good at writing if you've only ever written one style of thing?
Well, that was the cool thing, is that we had opportunities where we wrote for like film and TV or whatever, and I remember this one movie was like, hey, we don't have the budget for this song. Like I can't remember the name of the band, like who it was that they wanted. It was a super popular pop act. They're like, but can you guys write something like?
We like you to rip them off.
Pretty
not
much.
from an illegal way, but
But and that was
inspired
one
by
of the
heavily.
and to me it was like so fun because I always love those challenges. Like I always love thinking like, because to me a great song's a great song, and you can change genres with it. Like a great song in rock can be a great country song, can be a great, like it doesn't matter. Like a great song is a great song. And so I remember they're like, and we need it kind of like in a day kind of a thing. And so we're like, we accept your challenge. And so we wrote this like amazing track. And I remember it was just like, this is not us, but it was so easy to write because it was like just happy,
That's
easy this. And
funny.
they were like so blown away and we're like, this is awesome. We went into the studio the next day, finished it off, sent it off to them. We're like, this is amazing. And I remember just like, even like I wrote like an album for a young pop singer. And same thing. I was like, oh, wow. Like just writing from like a happy. And again, I was at a different place in my life. So I think that's part of it too, is acknowledging, again, going back to what I was saying earlier about being who you are, is that like I wish there would have been more, because I think that's part of the dilemma too, is that at the time too we had people feeding into us like, you got to be like this, as far as like you got to really perform on stage and you got to be this and you got to be the rock star.
Yeah,
and
you
you
have
got to
to-
look this,
yeah.
you got to do this stuff. And it's like, why didn't somebody just say like, hey, that's all bullshit. You just be you, and then we'll let the chips fall, because people will, like, I did not fall in love with Radiohead based off of a persona that was built up. I
No.
actually just loved what they wrote.
What they're doing.
And
Because it changes and morphs a long time kind of thing. If you like what
Yeah.
they're doing, you like what they're doing.
And
Yeah.
when you were exposed to it, those memories, it's kind of like the restaurant your daughters love. It's the memories that's what they love about it, as well as like, just they get to watch the pizza being made. This is a magical
Yeah.
experience with listening to a band. Like the first time you heard something, maybe you're relating it to that memory or that smell. Like you were eating a snack at the same time, and every time you have those Doritos and your fingers are covered in the chips, you're like, oh, I remember the first time that happened.
Yeah.
I was playing this video game, and it was just like all sorts of stuff. All connected with your senses and
Yeah.
memories and music and emotion.
What song was playing the first time I had Doritos
Yeah.
all over my...
Nacho cheese.
Nacho cheese.
It's like the first one's always disgusting, and then you can't stop. Like I have the first one, I'm like, oh, Then I have another one. I'm like, no, I love them. I can't stop eating them.
Oh, that's awesome.
I say, like, thinking back to, learning your voice and learning your instrument and being on stage, like, getting over, like, the stage fright, and, like, a lot of people have that with public speaking, right? Like, that's kind of a hard skill. And I found playing music and being on stage was, like, a good gateway to get comfortable being up in front of people. So that definitely helped kind of get used to that. But at first, my big thing is like I wanted to be funny, like I wanted to be like an entertaining, maybe not necessarily funny, but I wanted to like, be up there, be able to sing, but then, keep people entertained and like interact with them. But then that was the hardest thing because I'd be trying to think of like what to say and like,
I remember that.
and just being like those long awkward times, especially like guitar tuning in between. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm supposed to say something here. Like,
Someone told Tyler and I we thanked the audience too much. We
yeah.
shouldn't say thank you. But they're clapping, and it felt rude. We're
Yeah.
like, oh, thanks.
Thank you very
I
much.
remember that too.
Yeah.
remember
How do
that
you not
too.
say that?
Don't-
I said thank you all the time because I
Yeah.
honestly deeply meant it. I was like, I can't believe you guys are
You
paid to
just
be
cheer
here.
for-
I can't
yeah.
believe you're paying to see me. Like I was always so thankful.
You're living your dream.
You like
yeah.
We're
I
thankful
can-
for it, and like, no, you shouldn't say thank you all the time.
Oh,
I can't speak on stage. It's like
Well, what do
no-
they say? More
It's
people.
I have no problem going on stage. I have no problem doing stuff on stage. I'll play solos. But I cannot speak. It's like
They say that
this
people
is
fear death more than they fear what is it?
public speaking.
Public speaking more than death,
That's funny.
yeah,
which is crazy.
What kind of public speaking and what kind of death? That would be my follow-up question. Like, it's real
Yeah.
big. 'Cause there's a lot more death. I'd be like, you got to go up and talk to these people on a microphone,
Did you-
or there's a shark that's gonna eat you. I'm gonna have to give me the microphone, man. Like,
Did you
wanna
guys
see
see
a
that
shark.
plane engine explode?
Oh, I saw the article about it. I didn't see the
Did you
video.
watch the
of it.
video? That would be a bad way to go. Scare the crap
I
out of
didn't
me.
see that. That's
Oh
so
yeah,
funny.
like literally went, and like you could see the pilot actually landed with the.
Oh my
It
god.
was
They
like,
took off. They got way up in the air, and then the engine exploded. They went nope, and they turned around and they landed.
yeah, there's
It
Was
just
it on
happened.
fire the whole time? Like,
Yeah,
holy,
it
that's
blew
amazing.
up.
yeah, there's a
was in the
dash cam
news just
footage of it
recently.
blowing up. I haven't seen that, but I saw the footage of people like right next to the wing filming it, and it's like the shell had blown off of it. It was all
Oh my
like browned and just shaking. It was dead, and like. That would be the worst. It made me be like, now I'm afraid because I'm like, oh, it's been a while since anyone's flying. Is everyone all rusty? Like, I don't know if I
Oh
want to
my
get back out
goodness,
there.
That's crazy.
I gotta do a washroom thing again.
Peanut.
well, a good time. We're at about 2 hours and 20 minutes here, boys.
okay, well, maybe it's about time we wrap it up anyway.
Okay.
so-
Awesome.
Okay, well, that was a good one, boys.
Yeah.
Pineapple podcast.
Yeah, so that's it. That wraps it up for this podcast, anyways. Feel free to put any comments down below or let us know any questions, anything you're interested in hearing about. That's the whole point, is we want to hear from you guys and grow the community and, be one.
Be one. Discuss. help learn.
Yeah.
No, and if you have topics like you mentioned earlier, pass them along. Like write them in the comments. Let us know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it'd be phenomenal to be able to actually continue to open up discussion, kind of go beyond just us talking, but being able to converse back and forth with them. So if you guys have topics that you want to talk about, let us know. Because
Yeah.
again, if we don't know anything about it, we'll find people that know about stuff that we can talk about.
Exactly.
We're excited to grow this community, not just here locally, but I think to kind of spread it out and be able to grow it worldwide as well, even more.
Totally. And we're interested in hearing, too, if there's anybody you want to hear from, like anybody you want to bring on, a local artist. Once we're able to have people in here and kind of grow our bubble a bit, we'll get to that for sure. So we've already got some ideas, but we'll share those later.
Awesome.
All right.
Well,
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
And
Thank you.
Cue the music.